Somewhat, yes, we know. Don't worry, we're working on it. Time out.
It's on there.
Now it's on. Yeah.
Hey.
Okay, everyone in Zoom land, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I was gonna have to start doing American Sign Language here. All right, so what you missed was that we took roll call. Everyone is here except Marcus Gassick, who was excused in advance. We are going over the minutes. I made the motion to approve the minutes from the November 18th meeting, and I didn't get a second, so that's kind of where we left off.
I'll second that.
All right, David Austin, second. All in favor to accept the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passed. Okay, we're going to act on the payment of our bills now. So we had an invoice from Wayland Feeler, that's our attorney, from the month of November in the amount of $4,182. A lot of that was the in-person meeting we had on the 18th, and a lot of work on the site plan review legislation. Second one was,
Just so you know,
yes,
the drafting of the site plan legislation, basic drafting, we treat that as town board.
Town board meeting.
This is legislative. So when I put the hours in that I work,
yeah.
we're billed for that.
yes,
That comes, we pay the basic rate for the work we do in town.
right.
Excellent.
Thank you for the clarification. And then we had an invoice for $1,198.75 from the Rayner Group. That's our engineer who's here tonight. And that was also for the month of November. So I'd like to make a motion then to conflate these, the $4,182 from our attorney and the $1,198.75 from the Rayner Group, our engineer. Can I get a second to approve that?
I'll second it.
Matt Fox, second. So all in favor on that?
Aye.
Aye. That passed. Okay, so we have our 2012 Trudy Fowler Trust preliminary application approval resolution, which is number 18 for this evening. Just give me a second to. Yeah, but I have, there's a page too, so, okay. Thank you. All right. Okay, so I am going to, since we all know this application, we've been working on it for a number of months already here. I'm going to jump down to the finding of facts on F. Actually, just one thing. So it's residential AA, nearshore peninsular overlay. It's a type 1 from our SEQR review. We are the lead agency. It was considered a negative declaration, and we did that on August 6th, 2025. We got our letter from the Suffolk County Planning Commission, who reviewed the application, and they did recommend that the planning board require the applicant to acknowledge in writing that the approval of the subdivision does not in any way commit either town of Shelter Island or the county to protect the property's shoreline from erosion. Additional facts are that it has been reduced from, density has been reduced to 5 lots, where 7 lots would have been under present town zoning. The applicant proposed a 100-foot coastal construction setback from the top of the existing bluff. 2 additional sheds located near the bluff on proposed lot 3 will also be removed. And they proposed a conservation easement, which was approximately 53 feet to 55 feet deep along the property's frontage on Nostrand Parkway, with only 3 openings for common driveways, providing access to the lots, and with additional proposed structural setback of 25 feet adjoining the conservation easement on lots 1, 2, 3, and 5, with a proposed structural setback of 20 feet adjoining the conservation easement on lot 4. And again, these measures were designed to safeguard the existing rural character of Nostrand Parkway. And finally, all new residential construction within the lots created by the subdivision will be served by a low nitrogen IA system. Now, they did meet all the compliance of our town code and other requirements of law. That's from G. By the way, this resolution will be available to the public, obviously, on our website. And the conditions of approval, okay? That's probably the most important part. The applicant shall submit a final subdivision application within 6 months. The applicant shall obtain Suffolk County Department of Health Services approval of the plat and shall, as part of the final subdivision application, furnish this board with stamped copies of those final plats showing the Suffolk County Department of Health approval. The applicant shall propose with its final subdivision application the installment of such fire protection improvements as may be required by the Board of Fire Commissioners of Shelter Island Fire District, as detailed in our Town Code 111-39.1. The final subdivision application shall include the materials required by 111-17A of the Town Code, including their application fee, letters from public utility providers if needed, since the property actually already has a one-family dwelling, and the Shelter Island School District. Lastly, the final subdivision map shall include notation specifying all buildings and structures except walkways or stairways for beach access. They shall adhere to the 100-foot coastal construction setback from the top of the existing bluff as shown on the map. That all new residential construction shall be served by IA, the systems, low nitrogen septic systems, and that lots 1 and 2 shall share a single common driveway, and lots 4 and 5 shall share a single common driveway, but only if a new driveway is constructed to serve the existing house on lot 4. So those were our conditions of approval based on all the discussions. I know we gave Carl a copy. Carl, you got a copy of the draft, right? He's got it in front of him right now, okay. So I will need someone to make a motion then that we approve the preliminary subdivision application of 2012 Trudy Feller Trust.
I have a question.
Yes, Greg.
As for that, could you just elaborate on the provision, I don't know if it's provision, but the clarification that applicant is unwilling to covenant against the future subdivision of the oversized lot 1, meaning the property's potential overall density could someday become 6 lots.
Right, so that is something that we didn't put in here, so they can come back to the planning board in the future and ask that be.
And go through the entire process.
Yeah.
Of the division.
But they'd be back before us with a full application again.
It did also sound like from the owner's description of the lot, which had more detail than my own site investigation, because of the rock outcroppings and the topography, it would be extremely difficult to yield 2 lots out of it.
Well, they can say whatever they like, but a bulldozer can
Until they come here.
Yeah.
agree
Yeah.
to. Okay.
And
That was,
when we discussed that, the compromise was that we are limiting to 3 curb cuts for all of the lots combined. That was what we had discussed last time. And I would just note that the decision in subsection F, it notes that the oversized lot is lot 1. It's actually lot 5. So I would just ask that be changed. But otherwise,
you said, okay, on the first paragraph there?
it's the oversized lot is lot 5, not lot 1.
Oh, okay,
But otherwise,
got that.
otherwise, I think we're very happy with what Mr. Whalen put together and appreciate the board's consideration.
Mine is secure. Yeah, we also actually, Matt just noticed also on section D, secret, Rick has an O. It should be a Q.
Oh, yeah, it's
Seeker with
I did that on defense.
Okay.
Seora.
Ciora, yeah. Okay.
Sierra.
So I finished my sentence, but I believe I do need someone to make a
I'll
motion.
make a motion that we accept this
Austin?
with the one change to lot 5 and the U for the O.
But given those changes, second on that one?
Second. I'll second.
Sean, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Greg, you voting no?
Well,
You didn't respond, so
I am sort of abstaining.
okay. Noted.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
You want to stick around?
Our second one, which is number 19 for the year, Crescent Beach LLC sketch plan approval. Do you guys all have that for you?
Yeah.
Great. All right. Obviously, they've done the sketch plan as a precursor to the subdivision of lands, okay? The parcel, it's noted here, designated on its 11 Serpentine Drive, and the lands in question also comprise 384,125 square feet, which is approximately 8.82 acres. They also have frontage on both the west side of Serpentine Drive and north side of Shore Road, which is also County Road 42. These lands have some 401 feet of shore frontage on Shelter Island Sound. Obviously, number two, they've paid their required application fee. They have submitted to the planning board on section 3 here, a sketch plan, which was last dated July 24th. And the applicant, as it appears in the sketch plan, proposes to subdivide this 8.82 acre into 3 lots, of which 2 and 3 have frontage on it and will take access from Serpentine Road, while the lot on lot 1, will have frontage on and will take access from Shore Road. All lots are presently vacant. The property contains steep slopes, is heavily wooded down to the tidal wetlands, which the applicant's consultant has shown on the inland of the Shelter Island Sound shoreline. The sketch plan was looked at by Rick, our engineer, and that was dated from a memo on May 13th, 2025, and then an updated one on October 14th, 2025. Number 5 is pertinent. Slopes of 25% or more predominate throughout the property, with slopes exceeding a 45% gradient in some areas. The applicant proposes building envelopes in relatively flat areas on 2 and 3. Lot 1 contains exceptionally steep slopes as indicated by the applicant's own topography and by a slope analysis prepared by the planning board's engineer dated November 18th, 2025. That was our last meeting. Protection of these slopes within Lot 1, where no building envelope or other mitigative measures have been identified by the applicant, will be an important objective of the planning board during subsequent review of our subdivision. It's an AA, I'm in co-compliance, it's an AA residential zone district. All 3 lots contain at least 80,000 square feet of lot area, having road frontage of at least 160 feet. The subdivision is located in the near shore overlay and thus is not eligible for parkland waiver under our town code. The applicant proposes to meet the park requirement, also of our town code, through the creation of a park area parcel, which would consist of 38,475 feet, which is approximately 0.883 acres. And that would be on the southeast corner of the property with the frontage on Shore Road. Obviously, we looked at all this and we find that the sketch plan conforms to the requirements of Article 4. Sketch plan is set forth in our Chapter 111, which is our subdivision code of the town code, in that the basic lot layout's acceptable. B, pursuant to our town code, we classify the subject application as a minor subdivision, and we direct the applicant to comply with all provisions of the town code applicable to such minor subdivisions, which will include, of course, a public hearing once the minor subdivision application has been turned in and deemed complete by the planning board. C, the planning board preliminarily classifies the proposed subdivision as an unlisted action pursuant to seeker. All procedures applicable to the unlisted action shall be followed prior to the granting of a, probably you should say to the granting of minor. Rick, I don't know. To grant of, okay, whatever. Okay, grant of minor subdivision approval. The most important thing here is 4, which is our condition of sketch plan approval. So the planning board pursuant to 111-4 of the town code hereby grants sketch plan approval to the aforesaid sketch plan, conditioned upon the following. A, submission of the minor subdivision application. The applicant shall comply with all code mapping requirements. That would include the final plat mapping requirements set forth in the town code. B, the minor subdivision application shall comply with and or address all issues noted in the review memoranda prepared by the planning board's consulting engineers. C, the meets and bounds shall be prepared on the minor subdivision plat for the proposed building envelopes as proposed on 2 and 3. D, the applicant shall indicate proposed measures for the protection of steep slopes throughout the subdivision property, which may include a building envelope on proposed lot 1 and scenic and conservation easements over parts of all of the lots shown on the proposed minor subdivision plat. E, the applicant shall indicate as part of its minor subdivision method the intended means of furnishing the proposed lots with a water supply. If it is intended that the lots will be supplied with public water from the Shelter Island Heights Water District, evidence of such an agreement with said water district shall be furnished to the planning board. F, the intended means of installing a public water service line to proposed lot 1, which is currently proposed to be served by a 20-foot wide utility easement, shall be specified together with proposed measures for avoiding the disturbance of steep slopes during the installation of said water line. G, wetland setbacks for clearing and construction on lot 1 shall be depicted on the minor subdivision plat. H, application for subdivision approval shall be made to both Suffolk County Department of Health and the DEC, with the understanding that said approvals, or in the case of DEC, possibly a letter of non-jurisdiction, will be made a condition of minor subdivision approval by the planning board. I, meets and bounds shall be provided for the proposed park area and the intended disposition, whether it's, proposed future ownership, et cetera, of the park area shall be set forth in writing or labeled on the minor subdivision plat. J, the applicant shall submit the sketch plan to the Shelter Island Fire District with the request that the said district specify its fire protection requirements with respect to the proposed subdivision. The applicant shall advise the planning board of such requirements, if any, and any improvements or facilities required by the fire district to be placed or installed on any installed on or adjacent to the subdivision property shall be shown upon the proposed minor subdivision plat. I think those were the major highlights of the resolution. So I need a member to make a motion that we approve Resolution 19 for the sketch plan approval for subdivision of Crescent Beach LLC.
So moved.
Greg Cranford, second. David Kriegel. All in favor on that? Aye. Okay, that passed. Thank you. Sorry? Yes, John, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you yet.
Unmute.
We can't hear
You're still
you.
muted.
There you go.
Just give us a,
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you now.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's all.
You're
No,
welcome.
thanks for the resolution. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
So it's on the agenda later, but I assume you're not going to talk about
No, we're just
Okay,
going to mention
great.
that we already approved it. Yeah.
it. Thank you very much. No surprises there. Everything we'll take care of. And I just want to make sure that on the DEC, I think I heard you mention it's possible, since we're not creating any new lot lines within the 300 feet jurisdiction, they may issue on the subdivision application aspect of it, they may issue,
Non-jurisdiction.
yeah, well, they may not, but in any event,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
That's up to DEC, but if they decide it's non-jurisdiction, then fine, it's non-jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you very much.
John?
All right. Next resolution is number 20 for the Radican lot line adjustment extension request. So what happened here was they changed surveyors, I think, Jessica, right? Surveyor. Yeah, they changed surveyors. So they've now since gotten the new determinant, like the new letter, new picture, but they need to go over it. And actually, Rick and Rick you guys have to go over that. So Matt Sherman's, well, he hasn't done it yet, but he's going to be submitting it to us for you to double check it. A survey, because they switched surveyors. So they have to do it over again and make sure everything matches up. So Matt said he just needed an extension on that. That's the only reason. So that's why we did that. Yeah. Just checking to make sure. So just so the board knows, we have previously granted this applicant extensions on, last year around this time, March 11th, pardon, June 10th, September 9th. This would be, December 9th would be our next one. But again, Matt got to us in time, and so I'll make this motion actually that we approve the extension for Rick Radigan for his lot line adjustment. If I could get a second on that.
I'll second it.
All right, Matt, thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
That's it.
Put it on that one. Just move it over. Okay, so that's it. I need a motion to close the
I make a
business.
motion that we close the business meeting.
Oh, actually, I just want to say one thing. Just one thing. I promise it'll be very quick, but I just wanted to say, and I couldn't say it before because the mic wasn't working, but today is actually the last meeting of 2025 for us. And I think I should just say a little thing before we just move on to the next year, is that this has not been an easy year for us. We started off the year change of chair, right? And then we added 3 new members. We got Rick, but we said goodbye to our previous attorney. We had an interim attorney. Then we were great enough to get Rick. Then we had our engineer Joe retire, hence we got Rick Vesnovsky. So we've had some bumps in the road, but I guess I just wanted to thank everybody that, for coming along with the ride and, being, flexible and going through the growing pains of getting us through the first year. And I think we've all been respectful of each other and we've worked well together. And I just want to say I'm looking forward to continuing on with everybody for next year.
Thank you.
I think your leadership made it easier.
Thank you. That's very nice.
You've done a commendable job, and I think we've all worked well together.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that. So cool.
Now can I make a motion to close this?
Yes. Yes. Second on that. Yeah, okay, all in favor? I knew as I opened my mouth, you're going to be like, no. Okay.
All good.
All right, so into our work session. Okay, so we just did this, actually. We just approved Rick Radigan's adjustment. So, and that's going to be, because that was due actually today. Okay, so Defoe and Shearer, we got an email from Matt Sherman who told us that the applicant has decided to withdraw it completely.
Oh, wow.
So, and we have that in writing on email. So this will be coming off the agenda, and for whatever reasons, which they did not disclose, they are just going to.
Was it Defoe or Shearer that we got from, or does it matter?
It
I know
was
the Shearer.
from Shearer. It was
Okay.
Shearer, I think,
That's okay.
is representative from that, but it was closed out, so
I think it was a trouble labels worth, maybe.
I don't know. They didn't say, but I'm not going to guess what the reasons were, but it is off the agenda now. Or it will be off the agenda, pardon. So that's it for our lot line applications. Under our subdivision category, the Bloom Minor subdivision we just did last time, so that they have now until February 11th. That had to do with the water hookup, okay? West Neck Creek Cottages, we're just waiting for, I think that's Matt Sherman too. We're just waiting to see what they're going to do, but they have until April 14th. Fowler Trust major subdivision we just did. Crescent Beach LLC we just did. Row Minor subdivision, the same thing. We are just waiting on a sketch plan if they decide to revise anything there. And the famous White Performance Pod. I see Meg is smiling in the audience, so, okay. No, nothing else to say about White Performance. Okay, under our wetlands review. So Bootsy. So let me just remind everyone that at the November 18th meeting, I think we took a pretty extensive dive into Bootsy. We had the applicant online that night. I actually see Vicky Cardero, and I can't see.
I'm here.
Okay, there you are. So, we did an extensive dive into this. We have our skeleton draft from Marcus. I have all the comments from David and everybody that night. It's on my desktop. The only thing I refrained from adding was the vegetation plans. That's the only reason why we didn't send that off yet. I was waiting for it. I do appreciate that you folks sent that in, but it did come in quite last minute before the meeting, and a number of the planning board members do work the business day. So I'm assuming that not everybody got a chance to look at it. My thought was that since we did such an extensive talk on it last time, that we simply just take a look at their vegetation plan. We can create a couple sentences that would go into our advisory memo to the town board, because again, this is not our jurisdiction, we're advisory only. We're going to be passing it on to them anyway. I do have, again, all the comments from everybody. So that was my proposal. I do appreciate, however, that Rob Herman, who just mentioned that he was online there, he did, you saw in the email, it was quite a nice summary of what they did. So I'm not going to read through it, but I think if you just look through 1 through 9 and look at the vegetation plan. Rob, can I just ask you, like, if you could keep it brief, but just a quick summary of things that we might want to know about Vicky's plan, or?
Yeah, so so two things. One, I just wanted to mention, I don't know who's monitoring, but I think just two folks who wanted to watch this, the applicant, the architect, Jim Nolan and Mike Ebel. I think they're waiting in the waiting room to be let in. If somebody can do that, they don't necessarily have to speak, but I just know they were trying.
It's just important if a participant's going to be on Zoom that on their, I guess the notation on their phone, that they actually put their name in. Because if it just says iPhone, we don't let people in for obvious reasons.
Right.
You can get,
all right, so they can go ahead and do that. But to honor your request, I will try to be brief, because we did send, we submitted 2 documents. And it was one of the reasons I had appreciated you holding off until your meeting this month, because at the last meeting, aside from submitting a detailed plantings plan, there was a lot of comments from several board members who were stating a pretty strong recommendation, as I took it, that the swimming pool that was located partially within the 100-foot wetlands regulated area should be moved out of it. And I gave what I thought was a pretty wonderful pitch as to why we had designed it that way. But I don't think everybody was happy about it. And so we talked with the applicant, and so along with that plantings plan, we submitted a updated site plan that shows that swimming pool modified so that it is now in fact located behind the 100-foot wetland setback, and thus outside the wetlands regulated area, as the planning board members were recommending at the last meeing. There were some other comments that had been made, some of which were the same as comments that had been made by the CAC and or the town's environmental consultant, Teresa Mason. So those items that you referenced, 1 to 9, those are all the changes that were made to the site plan, but most significantly, it was the construction design element that the board seemed to be pushing for last month that this new site plan reflects. So that 864 square foot swimming pool that had 100 square feet within the adjacent regulated area has been reduced by about 113 square feet to a 751 square foot pool, now located outside the wetlands regulated area. There were other metrics that were updated. There was something like a 4 square foot change to the patio beneath the overhanging deck. But the overall net coverage of the patio and the deck didn't change. So the plan also reflects a slight reduction in proposed lot coverage as a result of the reduced pool. There had been a request by Teresa Mason, I think, to provide a profile to demonstrate the pool would be elevated well above the water table, which was added and included with that email, and some other requests that included comments from the planning board that we were hoping to resolve with this change. They added the existing electrical panel, a note that aside from the proposed well and associated water line, there will be no utilities, generators, solar, battery, electric, or otherwise proposed within the wetlands regulated area. We added a note clarifying that there are no irrigation wells proposed. That was something that had been a vestige and out-of-date notation on the health department approved plan. But this plan is now updated to affirm that there are no irrigation wells proposed, nor would they be allowed, I believe. A note has been added to the buffer area that references the plantings plan that was separately submitted. And although it's well out of the regulated area, I think Teresa Mason had also asked that the second floor decks on the backside of the house be shown. So what we tried to do with this, because it is an extensive review process and there are multiple subcommittees who weigh in, the applicant's effort here was to try to respond to all of the guidance and all the recommendations that we've received from all three subcommittees at this point, not formally from your board, but at least what I was hearing preliminarily at the last meeting. So we're hoping that you will respond positively to those changes that followed your guidance. And that was really it. I don't have too much to tell you about the plantings plan. If you have any questions, Vicky is here, and I'm happy for her to speak to that. But it should be pretty straightforward. It's a pretty typical native plantings plan. But again, Vicky is here in case you have any questions.
No, Rob, this is really terrific, actually, that the applicant went back based on our comments and rethought, pulling that out of the wetlands boundary. So I'm particularly pleased about that. And this is really the only piece that we were missing was the vegetation plan. Do you guys have any? I mean, I think we can easily. Are you okay with then us just adding creating a few sentences on that last memo, and I'll pass it around for town board?
I am.
I have a few questions while Vicky's here. In terms of the vegetation, you put a lot of effort and it looks wonderful around the pond, which is not going to be an area with any site disturbance from construction, at least as I understand it. Where there will be considerable disturbances probably in the AVB for the construction of the house and the pool and the associated patio. But no revegetation or planting at all, in fact, is shown in that area. And also the existing trees, which I had commented on, are still not shown. So the first question is really, what are your thoughts on new planting within the AVB, which is going to be pretty well flattened probably by construction?
So Vicky can speak to that. She's here, but it may just be a drop in communication as much as anything else. I had there will be a complete landscape plan for the site, I'm sure. But the area that I had understood that the board was looking for was the plantings plan for that proposed vegetation buffer around the wetland. And so that's what Vicky provided at this point. I know that's definitely what Teresa Mason and the CAC had both requested. So obviously there will be a comprehensive landscape plan for the whole site. I don't know, Vicky can speak to this. I don't know how far along she is with that. We don't have a hearing until more than a month from now. So that will leave her a little more time to develop that. But that's something certainly we can get submitted. But I had understood the initial push to be related to, the wetlands buffer plantings. That the area that would be a non-disturbance buffer, basically, because
Typically what we.
Right. That makes sense. And it looked like such a barren swath between the house and the revegetated area. I was a little curious about what the vision was for it.
Yeah, David, it was certainly not the intention to not plant anywhere but that. That was just that plantings plan is just for the that non-disturbance buffer. Vicky, do you want to unmute and pop on and just speak to your plans to have a landscape plan unless you all planning board don't think it's needed at this time?
I mean, I don't know whether it's necessary right now because it is going to go to the town board and at that point they can request it and she's going to have it ready for that meeting anyway. I mean, I'm satisfied with,
Yeah.
at least knowing that there's going to be a more in-depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll get reviewed there.
I'm fine with it.
I was just going to ask, I think you said it and typically would be, all of the species identified in the plan are native?
Are you asking? Yes, they are. And most of them are Long Island provenance. And also the trees within this buffer, I was just requested to do a 25-foot deep around the pond. That was what was requested for the revegetation. And the trees, the oak trees that are there are on this plan. If you see the existing trees, there's like 5 or 6 notated on that, in that area there.
I don't have the plan in front of me, but I'll take your word for it.
It's on the new one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks, Vicky.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. And just so you know, again, it was a little bit of a fire drill to get
Site
that
photos.
emailed to everyone. We are gonna deliver hard copies over to the town clerk's office, and I believe there should be enough of those to go around to all the subcommittees. So you'll be able to get your hands on the hard copies.
That's great. Thank you.
We appreciate your responsiveness to our comments.
Yeah.
No
Thank you.
problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here for the next one too, so I'm gonna stick around.
Oh, you're
Bye,
here
Rob.
for- Okay, that's right.
The only thing I'd say is in the comments back to the board is do ask for, make sure that all actual trees are matched. 'Cause it seems like there might be some missing. Just do a check.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my only.
Thank you. Okay, so next one is Coleman Rosofsky. Oh, also, I did want to know, while Rob was talking earlier, I did dismiss our engineer, Rick, because there's really no other to be here, so I relieved him, he came home a little earlier,
It's the
so.
billing too.
Yes, I'm trying to be conscious of the finances, so, okay. All right, so Coleman Rosofsky, thank you to David Kriegel, who sort of summarized the site visit for us and gave us a little draft to work from. So David went, who else?
Marcus?
Marcus is not here this evening, and Nishan went.
Yep.
All right, so on this one, just some key points, just to bring everybody back to one spot here. So this is the one where there's quite a bit of demolition and, in the act of, redoing the property. We've got the case of the 2 ADA ramps, which I and David Kriegel both wrote to Reed to get some clarification on that. I'll let David talk about that. But the wetland setbacks were not quite clearly indicated on the drawings. There's also a 2002 covenant on this property regarding the deck, that it cannot be roofed or fully enclosed. And Reed's interpretation of the way it was written in the actual covenant was that it applies to the whole deck, not just, a part of it, like either the adjacent regulator or the vegetated. That's actually it's the whole entire deck. There is obviously a deck and pool expansion in the adjacent regulated area on this one. And according to Reed, it might be a case of the fact that these ADA ramps were part of a dock permit to redo the existing dock. And then, so when you're talking about docks, when you say ramp, that the ADA ramp is the boardwalk that he was talking about. So
If it's associated with the dock permit,
that's associated, right?
we don't know if that's the case.
I had hopes of digging and finding out more about it, but I never got around to it unless somebody
We
else.
have the owner on the call,
Yes.
so
So we can,
can we ask him?
you can ask him, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should I respond to a couple of those things?
Let me try to phrase the question succinctly. I guess basically, first, what is the purpose of the ramp?
So I will let either the homeowner, Stuart Coleman, and or the architect Mary Ward respond to that in terms of the purpose and design. I can tell you that in terms of the permitting jurisdiction, and I don't know if I could be misremembering this, but I believe my understanding from Reed, based on other cases, is that because this proposed ADA ramp, and there are two, there's one on the water side and one on the road side. Because the ramp is located entirely landward of the wetland area and is in the wetland regulated area and provides basically handicap access to an existing dock, it must be part of a wetlands permit review and approval, as opposed to being able to be separately added to a dock permit, which is, of course, as you know, a different type of permit. So that is why it's on this plan and was reviewed as such by Reed, I believe. To my knowledge, it doesn't have any relationship to any prior dock permit. This is something that is being proposed currently due to the needs of the current owners. So with that, I don't know, Stuart, if you want to speak to that directly and or let Mary respond, but I'll leave the floor to you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to let Mary, if she's willing to speak, and I will either fill in or take her place if she runs out of steam.
Thank you, Stuart. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
My name is Mary Ward. I am the architect on the project, and part of the goal of this project is to make accessible from the driveway to the dock without steps, the house and the pool and the dock. It technically is not ADA, nor does it have to be ADA because it is a single family residence. So I just want to make that clarification because there are very specific laws that one has to follow to comply with ADA. And this, because it's a single family residence, does not have to comply to like certain slopes and certain distances and landings and all that kind of stuff. But it is accessible in the way that you can get from the car to the house, to the pool, to the dock with a walker or a wheelchair or even a cane, because there will be no steps involved. Right now, there are many levels and many steps that we're trying to resolve, make a cleaner journey through the property. Does that answer your question, or do you have additional questions?
Well, that was the first question, and you've hinted that one of the owners has mobility issues. At least that's what I infer, which puts it in a different light. I mean, it is called out in multiple places as an ADA ramp. I understand it doesn't need to be. It's not a public building, and it doesn't meet, as you pointed out. You don't have a landing every 30 feet, et cetera. My concern with, let's call it ramp number 2 from the deck down to the dock is that it's almost entirely in the vegetated buffer. And looking at the drawings, it's certainly possible to build a ramp that starts roughly at your 10-foot elevation near the driveway and goes down entirely within the AVB and gets you down to the 6.5-foot elevation. And from there, you could do a permeable surface or something built on sleepers over the vegetated buffer, whereas the ramp is going to require a lot of structure and a lot of posts and footings, and that's not really shown in the drawings. I sort of wish it was, but it seems to require a lot of disturbance. I think it'll be visually obtrusive as well, and I'm not sure. It seems to me you can probably provide the same level of access, albeit from the other side of the deck, down to the elevation you're trying to get to, in as secure and compliant a way. And our criteria for approving what's essentially new construction in the vegetative buffer is you have to demonstrate there's no other solution. And I think in this case, if you look at the starting point of the second ramp parallel to the first ramp, only sloping down instead of up, you can get there in less obtrusive a way.
We can certainly look at different options. This just to clarify that there are a handful of precedents that I looked at in designing what I view as a ramp that is light on the land. It floats above the land. It will have piers that like any deck would have. But I've gone to national parks, to beautiful like Reed Hillerbrand private residences. There's one at the Audubon site in Connecticut that I went to look at on site that goes through a wetland. I grew up near one at the Great Swamp in New Jersey. So I do think that, I don't know that on Shelter Island there are precedents for this, but it does, one of the tricks in placing it is finding enough length to have the slope be manageable, but also have it, I mean, from an architectural point of view, feel like a journey. We could certainly do a direct ramp from the deck down to the dock, but the slope would actually be quite high, steep. Sorry about the misspeaking. But I
don't disagree. I think, I mean, most of the ramps or most of the walkways over wetlands, and I've been on a lot of them as well, in Louisiana in particular, where there are flooded forests with beautiful, walkways over them.
Yep.
In this case, though, at least in the current planting, you're talking about a ramp over a lawn.
It won't be a lawn.
Well, it may not. It'll be different kinds of planting proposed. Of course, it'll be dark and shady under most of it, and I'm not sure how successful you're going to be in encouraging growth under an opaque deck.
Well, we are working. It will follow the wetlands requirements for permeability through a structure, and we're also working closely with the group for the East End in choosing native plants that will that will hopefully, plants are plants, but they will hopefully grow. And we have been to sites that also have plants that flow underneath them. I mean, right now it is a lawn right now, and we are trying to make it less, like a no-mow meadow, basically, where it's got plants with deeper roots that don't need watering, no fertilization, no pesticides, very little mowing, the mowing that would be required maybe once or twice a year to keep weeds out, things like that.
I'm sure it's possible to make this a beautiful thing. I do, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I think you really have to stretch the definition of shade tolerant plant when you're talking about under the deck. And I think you could make a ramp that is in the adjacent vegetated buffer and make it a pleasant experience, and it doesn't have to be a straight shot, and it could follow the curves of the other ramp you're proposing, or however you want to design it.
Is it, just to clarify, I mean, we are more than willing to look at various options.
Take a look. I mean, I drew it, and
is
you
it
can.
the placement of it that is on the north side of the lot that bothers you, or is it?
It's entirely in the vegetated buffer. It's in the 75-foot buffer, and I don't believe it needs to be.
Wouldn't any ramp that gets to the dock have to move through the buffer?
Yeah, but if you start, and I'm happy to have a call with you and talk about it,
Yeah.
but if you start
Maybe we can meet on site sometime.
if you start the ramp at the 10-foot elevation, which is the driveway, and go down the 70 or 80 feet to get a 1 in 12 slope, you'll end up, somewhat before the swimming pool and still in the adjacent buffer. And from that point, you could certainly do a ADA compliant walkway, but it would be on the ground, at that elevation 6.5, as
Rob,
opposed to flying over the lawn.
Rob, would that be it through the vegetative area?
Yeah, but I think what David is saying is the way it's drawn now is that the elevated structural access is going all the way to the dock. In other words, you're achieving the drop in elevation through the maximum amount of the regulated buffers as you possibly could between the deck and the dock, which is not illogical. But I think what David's saying is you could get to that lower elevation sooner, as in farther from the water, closer to the house and deck, so that you could then have a walkway, a lower set walkway that would go to the dock. And David will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what he's getting at.
So you would rather have the planking closer to grade?
At grade on sleepers, as opposed to requiring footings.
It's about less structure.
I don't.
I mean, the problem is what's designed is a ramp where you have to go up and then go down. So you're going from 14.5 feet to 6.5 feet, as opposed to from 10 feet to 6.5 feet. So it's requiring a much longer ramp because of the decision, which is probably a more pleasant experience, frankly, to go from the pool area down to the dock, as opposed to having to backtrack to go down.
Well,
I mean,
how about-
the good part is that really what they're proposing, in addition to, the sort of the wider non-disturbance buffer adjacent to the wetland boundary, is I believe the intention, and Mary or Dorset can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the intention as it's depicted on the plan is basically to naturalize most of that buffer area. So in other words, it's not just the non-disturbance buffer, which is hatched on the site plan in green, but even beyond that, there's proposed meadow with native grasses and wildflowers, shade tolerant, et cetera, throughout that whole area. So I think we're with you on the overall theme. The owners are with you on the overall theme of naturalizing most of that buffer area between the developed portion of the site and the wetland. So I don't think any of this is going to be a problem. It might just require a little bit more discussion, not on everybody's time, maybe between you and Mary and Dorsa and the owner to figure out something that might be more palatable, but also suit the owner's needs.
Yeah, the creating a natural area may very well be a compensating factor. It's just not clear how big that is, where it is. to consider it fully?
Sure. Yeah. So we've got the quantitative and qualitative description for the non-disturbance buffer, the 25-foot width, which is what's consistent with what Teresa and the town board have been applying to other projects. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't further quantify. I mean, you'll see the note that says proposed meadow in place of existing turf to include native grasses and wildflowers for part shade to shade, proposed drought tolerant turf lawn on walking paths. So certainly it could probably just add some, potential limits and quantification of those areas as well.
Yeah, I think what would be very helpful is if the building elevation looking, I've forgotten which direction, I guess it's from west to east, where you see the skinny side of the pool in elevation, the ramp doesn't show in that drawing. And it would be very helpful, I think, to visualize the ramp and the pitch and the spacing of the structure so we can understand what the whole picture is. I mean, that's true for both ramps, but this one in particular.
And Mary, didn't we come up with some additional plans like that, or are they still in the works? Because I think the CAC may have asked the same thing. Am I remembering that correctly?
You are remembering that correctly. And Dorsa and I internally have worked out, along with our engineer, have worked out some preliminary drawings, but we didn't, we don't want to overload everyone with lots and lots and lots of drawings until they're asked for. So we
sounds like now would be a good time.
You bet. Yeah, I appreciate the need to simplify. That happens to be a very important drawing.
And we will, Rob, let's talk about getting that to them, however the proper way is.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I just wanted to respond to one other thing, which there is that old covenant. I think the Hardy permit was one of the first wetland permits that was issued by the town after adoption of the wetlands law. And the originally approved pool and deck, there was that covenant that the deck could not be roofed and closed, et cetera, because the idea was they did not want the creep of or the extension of potentially livable space. I would have to get I would have to seek an attorney's opinion on how that covenant relates going forward, given that deck will no longer exist. I did anticipate that this board, the town board, would probably look to recreate a new covenant that would probably require, have the same limitations on the newly proposed deck. But I think to that end, and again, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's certainly no proposed enclosure of any part of the deck. And the only so-called covered portion I'm aware of is that open trellis on the side of the house. And I don't know that would
between the two ramps
as a roof over.
And that roof, I believe, is outside of the wetland area.
I'm referring to the proposed screen porch. And yes, it's outside the wetland area, but the covenant, which is very brief, says the deck shall never be roofed, fully enclosed, or used as habitable space. And I had to copy it from one of your drawings, but another drawing so I could see how these things all related. But it's pretty clear that a portion of that screen porch, about 25% of it, is over the deck that was built back in 2000. I don't remember the exact year.
It would be in place of, not over.
I know, but you're building a room with a roof on it.
Yeah.
But it's
wetlands.
that's within code. I mean,
But I mean, you're right. This is a question for the attorney.
And tell me-
My interpretation of it, and the building inspector corroborated it, is that area of the deck, even though it's outside of the AVB, is the deck that's referred to in the covenant, and it shouldn't be built over.
Well-
And I think the solution, or at least a solution, is you slide the screen porch back 5 feet or whatever it is, and then you're no longer over the old deck, and it solves the problem, but you lose one view out of the screen porch. But
Right.
I think it's a pretty solvable issue if you're willing to slide things around and not overlap the footprint of the old deck.
Yeah, we'll have to look at it. I will see that Reed
Squeeze
is
the
almost,
setback there a little bit.
It's outside of the wetlands
yeah,
permit.
Reed is almost always right. But
Not our
but that covenant
It
was
is because of the
only,
covenant.
that covenant was only enforceable in connection with
That's what the covenant.
100-foot wetlands regulated
That's
area,
it.
But
which this is outside of.
Covenant.
It's true, but I mean, unfortunately, the attachment with the covenant is not particularly legible, and it's at such a small scale that the house is about 1/4 of an inch long. So
Yeah.
you can't really see the limits exactly of what they were referring to, but they used the word, the deck.
Yeah, no, I get it.
They didn't
We'll
say
have
the
to-
portion of
we'll
the
have to
deck
get an
in the
opinion on it.
AVB. Yeah,
We'll-
So-
we'll
He
have to
has,
solve it. We'll have to
Rob-
solve it either by modifying it, getting a legal opinion that Reed's interpretation is incorrect, or ask the town board to effectively nullify the covenant that's going to be associated with a deck that doesn't exist anymore, and impose a new covenant with essentially the same restriction over the newly proposed deck, but with an allowance for a structure that's outside the regulated area. Those are really the only three practical outcomes. So we'll have to figure out which one of those ends up working.
so that, David, that's your point in bringing it up, that they have, between now and when they have the hearing, they can work on this. And as
Well,
you
the
said, Rob.
The porch is not a subject of this application. Like, it's not included in Reed's denial letter because it's not actually within the wetlands regulated area. So I think Reed's point.
David, I think we should let them prepare this for next.
okay.
I think
Yeah.
that I agree with that.
Yeah.
Greg has a quick question. Yeah.
It's sort of in the same vein of David's question. It's about ramp A, the one from the driveway to the deck. I assume that it's going through the middle of the AVB in order to get additional length so that you have a lesser slope. But I wonder if there's a way of sort of mitigating its impact on the AVB by sort of pushing it up a little so it hugs more the outer edge of the AVB, that 100-foot. So it's not just going right through the middle. I don't know if that's a crucial thing, but it just sort of pops out to me as something that might allow a little more or a little less impact on the AVB in that
You
area.
mean pulling it closer to the house?
You get closer to the 100-foot line.
You see the arc of the AVB, pulling it up closer to the arc of the AVB.
So curves more.
Well, so it follows that arc more than just going straight through the middle of the AVB.
instead of going like
Right.
this,
Often.
like this.
And so,
I think
you know, it would
retaining wall
just,
issue.
I think it would allow,
Low.
by placing it sort of in the middle of the AVB, I feel like it sort of impacts the entire width of the AVB.
Okay.
I think that has to get lumped in with the discussion of the other ramp.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
But thank you for bringing it up now, because then they can discuss both.
This ramp starts here and ends over here.
Would you permit a question from the least knowledgeable person on this call?
Is that you, Stuart?
That's me.
What's the question, sir?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Julia. Um, what's the AVB?
That's the 75 to 100-foot
Yeah.
wetlands setback area where construction is permissible with a wetlands permit, as long as there's good justification and justifiable design that goes along with it. So I think what you're hearing tonight is not that anyone would begrudge you disability access or the ramps altogether, but are just they're trying to pry at the idea of whether the design can be modified in any way to reduce or limit the overall surface area and or vertical elevation of the structures in a way that you don't have quite as much of those structures cutting through that wetlands regulated area.
Okay, so can I then follow with a question which is clearly naive? If you were inclined to permit the drawings as written, are you saying that as written, it offends the relevant rules? Or are you saying something else?
To answer your first question, the A in the VB stands for adjacent vegetated buffer, in case that acronym is a mystery.
But I thank you.
Yeah, I think the criteria for granting the permit is you have to explore alternates that are the least invasive. And
Or to put another way, you have to show that your plan is the best one because others are not, basically. You have to show why yours is the best
It's
way to
not why
go.
it's the best. You just have to, according to the rules, the best. It just has to be offered up as possibility.
the
You still
thinking,
decide that you want to do this one.
the thinking is the closer you build to the water, the more
That's the way it's written.
potential for having adverse effects. So the further you can pull it back, the more sustainable it is. At least that's my understanding of it.
No, I appreciate that. And I live in a lawyer's world because I'm a lawyer. And so my question, which I think you've answered, is does this current plan offend a particular regulation?
No,
And
no, I can talk with you more about this outside this meeting, Stuart. I think what the board members are saying, and remember, they are an advisory committee to the town board who eventually decides to approve this or not.
Yeah.
And you, after exploring this further with Mary and Dorsa, may decide that you don't think there is any other way to implement these ramps except as they are proposed currently. And despite the planning board's recommendations, the town board could end up agreeing with you and approve these just as they're drawn. But what we're doing is we're taking in the comments and recommendations of the planning board, which they'll pass on to the town board, which the town board will then echo back to us, at which point you can say one of two things. Either you've explored this and there is no other alternative, and this is a perfectly justifiable design, or you might end up saying you did look into it and you were able to come up with some alternative that furthered the comments of the planning board, which if you were here, you'll see we just did on the prior application regarding the location of a swimming pool. So that's the idea. And so you and Mary and Dorsa, I know 100% that Mary understands what's being discussed here, and can discuss this further. And it sounds like David's even offered himself as a part of that conversation with Mary to see if there's any part of this design that can be modified in a way that addresses the board's comments. Maybe not, but maybe so. That's what you have to take a look at. That's what they're asking.
No, and I really appreciate the opportunity to engage in this, which I think is a very constructive conversation because I now better understand the planning board's questions, which I'm very grateful for, and certainly will follow the board's requests and suggestions. And we've been so well counseled by you, Rob, and Meryl and I by Mary and Dorsa as well. But I think you all could appreciate my general desire to understand it, and therefore I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to ask these questions, and I'm grateful for your responses.
Thank you, Stuart. Rob? I just want to remind everyone that we still have site plan review legislation. But luckily, it's only 8:15.
I'm done if you guys are.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob, for answering our questions.
Thanks for your
You're welcome.
time.
And thank you,
We'll
Mary.
get back to you with drawings.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
Stuart.
Nice.
Good night.
Thank you all. Appreciate hearing us. Bye-bye.
Nothing new from Sylvester Manor?
No. So, at our last meeting, I think we all came to the conclusion, along with Julia, who was here, that there's a lot more needed, I think, for us to have clearer diagrams, maybe different quality submission of some of these diagrams. I personally did not feel like I was in a position to conjure up in my imagination where things were going to be, and unless you're there and seeing everything. So I think we're just going to wait. And I did speak with Meg that you were going to also touch base with them and see if they can sort of redo everything or submit further, a little bit more clearer documents. I don't know.
We're getting the recommendations from all the different consultants, and then we'll put it together in a document and send it to them.
Okay. All right. So I think so that they might need some more direction to know than even what to give us. So I think that we can just, safe to say, we're just going to kind of put it to the side for a while until we get further substantial documents on that. Okay. So site plan review. All right. I do want to start off by saying that I think as the planning board leader, I think I need to apologize that in hindsight, at the last meeting, I probably should have just shut the meeting down at like whenever it was that we started, 10 to 10, because at that hour, we're not working at our optimal performance, and, our brain power is diminished at 10 p.m. And although, Rick, I do appreciate we had a pretty lengthy discussion, in-depth discussion, but I think we probably should have just shut it down and kept it going tonight. But I was just ambitious. I kind of foresaw us getting through this and then maybe moving on to wetlands, but it had good intentions. My ambitions had good intentions. So I apologize, and I take responsibility for that, and we'll do better in time management after that. I also just want to say that I want to recognize two very important things that I found in the notes, and one was from David Austin, who reminded us about, the bigger vision about where are we going with this, and how do we want, I really appreciated your summary, that we have to go into this with our eyes open about how we want this, how the structure should be in legislation for the various types of business applicants that are going to be coming in. And I want to say a few more things about that. By the same token, I also appreciated Sean's input in the shared drive comments in regards to clearing and grading, because those are the two most popular things that are going to come up in the commercial applications. And when I was thinking about this, what is it really? It's about being transparent about our values, and that's why we have 7 board members who may have overlapping values or differing values. But I do want to recognize that when you think of all the hobbies that all of us, all of each members here engage in, sailing, fishing, we're all outdoorsmen, right? So I think that's a positive attribute. We all really care about the environment. We care about conservation. But to be, totally transparent about our values is important. And I think what this comes down to is basically ownership that includes responsible conservation, whether it be, a homeowner or like what we're looking at here, a commercial applicant, versus sustaining seasonal business. And that's where we have to strike a balance. Obviously, some of us are pretty open about, I'm a tree hugger. Hi, I'm Julie, I'm a tree hugger. I'm saying that in a good way, but it comes from a good place. But I do recognize that in my being a conservationist, that my thinking can be myopic, both in my thinking and my planning, which is why we have 7 board members and not 1 board member. So I think we have to find some sort of balance here. And I also thought of Matt. So Matt and I have both worked in real estate, right? Well, yeah, maybe not so much now, but we have both. And I'm sure Matt will attest as to me. What I'm saying is that you can sometimes easily get buyers to want to come to Shelter Island and see something, or it's a hard no. So it's either I love Shelter Island or I hate the ferry. And I'm sure we all experience that too, is like a love-hate relationship with the ferry. And it does influence finance, right? Our goods, our passage, all these things are going to affect our economy. So I think what we really have to go in, as David said, with our eyes wide open, that we have a very unique pool of applicants that are going to be coming for commercial. It's going to be the mom and pop entrepreneur, and it's also going to be the corporate entrepreneur. And I don't see that mix changing. I think that's what we uniquely have, and it's going to continue because if you think about it, we're attracting a business owner with a really adventurous spirit. You really have to be a little bit of an oddball to first want to even come here and then to start a business, right? So the way I see it is that you're going to have, somebody's going to be considering that 3 to 4 month economy, really 3, maybe 4. The mainland doesn't necessarily attract this sort of, adventurous spirited entrepreneur as we do in the Hamptons. And the corporate entrepreneur is going to be weighing that ferry. Is it worth, the charm of the ferry versus what is the actual profit going to be, and the extra paying of goods and transporting goods and finding housing for their staff. And I think that those are the 2 very important things. So when you see Sean's comments on, let's be really specific about how we're going to keep trees on a certain degree or a certain percentage of trees on a property. How much are we going to clear cut? How much are we going to grade? Those are really important things, because when you think about the wetlands and trees, they're both working in a symbiotic relationship. And I don't have any, super optimism here where rose-colored lenses where I think that anything that we vote on or act on is going to stop gentrification of Shelter Island. But I think that we have a responsibility to the residents, and we have a responsibility to the comprehensive plan. And we have to be very clear about, if it's a small business that doesn't just afford you a big excusal slip to do whatever you want to do with the property, that's back to the responsible conservation concept. But at the same time, we have to have our eyes open that we're in a business depression right now. I just learned yesterday that Cornucopia is going to be closing. Very sad. It's been here since I was a little kid, all dogged up. We have the pharmacy closing, Cheekwood's pulling out. I just learned that Grady Riley is going to pull their application. I don't know where that's going to lead to, but these are businesses that were, longstanding landmarks, and now they're going to be gone. So again, that's why we have 7 board members. But I think where we need to be putting our efforts is, how are we going to maybe tailor this down a little bit to find that balance between individual responsible conservation and a commercial applicant and sustaining seasonal business. And I think that mix of business owner, it's the fact that we're waterlocked, that's not going to go away. So I don't see it as, let's emulate the Hamptons. Let's put everything that they have in our legislation, because that's not the circumstances that we're in. Does that make sense?
And we're very unique.
Yeah.
Right? The closest thing we're more like other small islands. It's like there are not that many, right?
Right.
Especially who have the level of commerce that we have.
Exactly.
In a lot of cities.
Yeah.
That's
And
why,
I don't have the answer, but
Yeah, no,
I need the answer from you guys. Like, that's what we
I
got.
took some comfort in that context of the minor site plan, that using that as often as possible so that it's not as much a burden.
Right.
But I don't know then do we need to throw in some parameters that give us a little nudge in that direction,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I kind of expressed it. My major concern is, I totally believe we should be conservative and make sure we don't destroy the land. That's not the goal. The goal is to actually have any commercial stuff here. This is not going to help. This is actually going to go the other direction. And I just want to make sure we thought about that, because it's more restrictive than the current code as far as the number of people who will have to go through this the way it's written.
But ideally, the result of our review is that it's a better looking project, not that it's more difficult.
It's going to, by just that fact, you're going to take more time, and in a commercial sense, time is money. And it's a net, more level of effort, more meetings, more time, more lawyer fees. So no matter what, if you have more things you're doing, I'm not saying it's wrong. I just want to make sure we're really consciously making that choice. Because one of the challenges, I'll get on a soapbox for 30 seconds and I'll get off.
Sure.
Because we don't have a new comprehensive plan, we're going on with an old comprehensive plan, which kind of covers this, it's pro-business, but it's not, it didn't really clarify what's our goal here. What are we trying to have more businesses? Are we trying to have more local business? Are we trying to, it's undecided, and we're bottom up doing code with no structure because we don't have a direction. So it's like, well, if you really believe in conservation, then we should do this. If you really believe that we should have more commercial local businesses because that's good for the economy, blah, 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 then we should maybe make it a little more, so that's the challenge we face. And again, that's where I got challenged, but I came to this before. It's like, I can get feedback on things, but it's so opinion based and unrelated to any structure of like, what is the goal? What are we actually trying to do in changing the site plan review? And that's where I got stuck.
I think we're trying to bring back some notion of conservation that I believe actually was here in Shelter Island and has gotten lost through just general
That's an
bits of
opinion,
people.
but that's an opinion. It isn't the rule, right?
No, but I'm saying it's not my opinion. I think a conservation mindset was out there, 50 years ago. It was here. It was just that people didn't, it was just done in a.
We haven't had the tools. It's been people are going to do the right thing, and they're not doing the right thing.
Well, I don't think it was people who were doing the right thing. It was people, we made rules based upon the knowledge of the people at the time and the science at the time, right? And also the fact that there's a bunch of people with a bunch of different opinions, right? So it's classic what happens in government. The thing is, though, what I don't hear or understand is what is the goal? More conservation, but what does that mean?
Who do you want to hear it from?
I don't know the answer to that. To me, actually,
Because I have an opinion.
well, I think we all have opinions.
We all have an opinion on that, so we need to articulate it. But for me, as Julia is saying, there is an element of conservation that I think we have to reinvestigate. And I step back and say, you say there's no umbrella for even approaching site plan development. I think there is an umbrella. We have a comprehensive plan, even though it's an old.
The current one, yes. Yes.
But with that, it's an umbrella. And part of that is, the integrity and nature of 114, which goes from the South Ferry to the North Ferry and really creates the impact and the inherent nature of what Shelter Island is. I think that's a relatively clear and definable goal. If I look at 114 in just the 25 years I've been here, I do not see it improving. I see it going the path of Montauk Highway. And that for me is a really very sad an totally avoidable situation. And I think if you look at just that one roadway and its impact on the island, I think it can give us all, we will have a different opinion about how best to achieve it. But I think it should give us all a very clear understanding of what can happen either in a good way or a bad way to sort of impact development. And development here in the next 25 years, you can guarantee will be different from the development over the last 50 years. If you look at what happened on 114 over the last 50 years, much of the commercial space is in little houses that were converted from residential to offices. And they have a scale that retains a residential scale. I fear that will change, and you can see it changing now. I mean, if you look at some of the new development on 114 that has gone up in the last 5 years, something going up right now. It is not like that. And I look at 114 from the curve at St. Mary's to the school, and I see a lot of destruction. And I think we really need to, I think Julia's point about how do we get back to the scale of preservation that enabled the island to evolve and grow at a certain scale. How do we retain that? I made the comment about bulldozers can do a lot on a site now that it used to be you wouldn't necessarily bulldoze a site. And I think the methodology of doing development has changed. And we have to really think about what we can put into place now to help mitigate and shape, not next week necessarily, but 10 years from now. There's almost not a single street tree along 114 anymore that overlaps the street.
So
They're all gone.
So perhaps it's just like a reasonable amount of mitigation coupled with like what he's talking about. To me, that's the conservation category, but in the same comprehensive plan, it talks about sustaining the mix of business.
The question is,
Different kinds of business.
how do we incentivize and what do we want to incentivize? That's what code will do.
Incentivize?
By incentivize is make it easier for people to build or do certain things commercially versus not, right? So how you write, so you can either put in the code lots of, you can't do this, this, and this, lots of no's, or you can put in inherently some yeses. If you do these things, then you'll get through faster and easier, right? That's
I
basically.
don't know that that's our job, to make it faster and easier. I don't think that that's our job in any case.
I'm not saying, as I said, eyes wide open. I wanted to make sure that we understood that as we're writing it now, we're not making it faster and easier.
Yeah,
we're making it
just
slower.
take it in the kind of, the other way to say it. We don't want to inordinately put in roadblocks that deter businesses if we could do it in a better way or more efficient or.
It's figuring out that balance. And that was all I was trying to raise, was just sort of be conscious of that as we think about it, because it's really hard when we're in the weeds. That's where I got in the weeds of like this little thing and how's it going to affect, like, well, these all have follow-on effect.
If I could just say, the small businesses that Julia mentioned, some of which have just closed or will be closing, those are the ones that should be easy, as you point out, should be easier to process and easier to help maintain their viability and get through the process quickly. It's the businesses, and they will have a smaller impact on the environment theoretically, because if they are indeed small businesses that are not, macro funded, they're going to be doing smaller things that have less of an impact. It's it's the businesses that come in that have a little money and a little scale that are the ones that are potentially damaging beyond even their viability as a business. So they can come in, create havoc, and then they go out of business, and we've got a ruined environment and no business. So to short sell ourselves and say, oh, we have to make it really easy for business to come here. Well, okay, you can do that, but the price you pay may be a ruined landscape and still no business.
And I'm not saying that we should be making it easy for everyone. That's what I'm saying. It's like, let's pick and choose, and that goes again back to what's the goals, right? If our goal is to have more small businesses that are locally owned, then you could write code that enables that much easier, right? But it was unclear to me whether that was really what we're, and this is where I'm just having a problem of like, what is our goal?
Okay, so could the goal be that perhaps we perceive in the history of site plan review that there have been some loopholes, maybe you call it, or some parts of it that were unclear, where unscrupulous applicants maybe tried to take advantage of that? So maybe we have to tighten things up a little bit. I personally, again, total transparency, I would like to see a little tightening of some of the conservation portions of it, particularly tree cutting, clearing, grading. Those are my two top things in my mind. However, and it's a good reminder from you again that we want to also, I think, make it more streamlined.
I mean, more process.
Yeah, and so we're not doing that. But as Greg just said, if he's assuming that mom and pop entrepreneur applicants may be coming forth with a less impactful application, what are we going to put in place to possibly make that easier for them? I don't know if we have that yet, but that would be my question to Rick.
I think
what elements could we put in that would make those kinds of applications go quicker? Now, you did mention in your email that, what's the phrasing that you use? You didn't like minor, what was the other one? No, not administrative. I liked yours better. Tell me again, what was?
I'm trying to remember too. Is it advisor? No.
Advisory?
No, that doesn't sound right either.
No, come on, you had a really good word.
I know, I
can't
did.
think of what it was now. Somebody help me out here. This word that he used last week for.
It'll come
No,
out.
it was not administrative. You didn't care for that choice, but
Minor.
advisory session, like, right, advisory versus full site plan review. But you mentioned in your email that it would still be at the discretion of the planning board.
Yeah.
But yes, but why, that's why we have 7 members. I mean, couldn't we still come to conclusion like, look, this applicant is definitely going to be put on the administrative kind of.
I totally agree. I think the big thing is the current discretionary is being done at the building inspector.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one person's making that discretionary call.
Right.
And so I'm not saying it's just different, right? So it means that no matter what, he doesn't have that discretion anymore. It has to come to the planning board, which means inherently it's going to be time based on when we have our meetings, which means inherently it's going to take longer to get the discretionary done.
Right.
Right. So that means this discretionary, this minor, I can't remember the word either, it really pissed me off. This minor site plan, that if it is a quote unquote fast track, is already slower to start than what they currently have it in discretionary. So we have to think about making sure that we don't make it even longer.
Right. I'm just trying to find your email because I had printed it for myself and now it's not in my file here. So wait, maybe this is it. Oh yes, but never mind. We just got it.
Yeah.
So just as a quick thing, so in the existing code, as you just said, site plan was discretionary by the building inspector. Now it's mandated by category, just as our draft is right now. There's no inspector discretion, and there's no work until you have a full site plan review.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at David's summary.
Yeah, and it's like, and again, I'm not saying that's wrong, but it is a change. I'm trying to figure out what was the impact to somebody coming to do something.
At some point, did I talk about or propose?
Yeah.
We forgot all about you. We're just having our own discussion.
You wrote a lot of work.
I looked very carefully at David's email. It's actually the only one I was, because really David's the only one who kind of wrote substantively about this. I know you have all these other comments. I hadn't seen them before, and they're kind of conversational, so they're hard to follow. So a lot of what I'm focusing on is going to relate to what David put in his email. Let me start with the starting. First of all, what is site plan review about? I have a clear idea of what your site plan is. I don't, the town does, but I do. Site plan should be about creating an attractive community, a safe community. I'm talking particularly in terms of vehicular safety. The site plans are about how you place buildings, parking areas, and vehicle access on a site and how they interact with their neighboring roadways and so forth. So you want to promote safety, you want to promote community attractiveness, you want to promote just overall good design. All right, that's the basic principle of it. It should be neutral. It's not, site plan review is not designed to encourage small businesses. It should not be designed to discourage small businesses. It should be, whether people decide to locate their business in Shelter Island is up to them. I think I'll state the obvious as a non-Shelter Islander, though, that, you are on an island, and given all these disadvantages people could perceive, you have to have you have to have something that really, I really like Shelter Island. I personally do, although I don't live here. It is still an attractive island, and you want to keep it that way because you have these other disadvantages, like having to use the ferry to encourage people to come here. So what I wrote is based off basically three starting points, three things. Your existing chapter in the code, chapter 109, a draft that was done in July and was circulated, including to me. Now, the town, I don't know who wrote this, and you don't have to tell me, I don't know that I want to know.
It was the,
Okay,
the other
one? I don't know.
maybe.
But I'm going to refer to it. The town board, I believe, must have authorized this, and it was circulated to me. And I also drew from the East Hampton Town Code site plan review, because I'm very familiar with that. So those are the three sources from which I drew. Couple of comments. First of all, this idea of building inspector discretion. You don't want discretion as to whether or not a project is subject to site plan review.
I agree.
You don't. An applicant or property owner should know, I either have to go through the permit process or I don't have to go through the permit process, and the criteria as to whether I have to do that should be as objective as possible, not subject to the whims of the building inspector, however good he or she may be. It should be clear cut. Now, it's not to be perfect, but for the most part, the decision whether or not you need to go through site plan review should not be a discretionary decision. When you're in site plan, obviously the planning board or whoever's reviewing the site plan has discretion as to where they think the driveway should go in the parking lot and all that stuff. That's part of the site plan review. But whether or not you've got to go through the process, that should be as clear as possible. You either do or you don't. The current code is very poor in that regard. It is very, very discretionary with the building inspector. It really, when you read it, it's almost like tautological. Yeah, if the site plan looks good, it doesn't need site plan review. But if I don't think it meets the standards, then I'll make you go to site plan review. That doesn't make sense. So the second thing I want to say is, and again, I'm working on this draft. I don't know who authorized, I don't know who did it. It didn't get adopted. But in terms of process, I'm going to explain to you the process that was set forth in this, which I don't think is streamlined. Pre-conference with the board was mandatory. No submission requirements. The applicant could say, I want to meet with you guys and come in.
We've done them here, yeah.
Yeah, sit in front of you. I mean, I assume they'll at least bring a survey or site plan, but they don't have to. So you're starting from nowhere. But it's mandatory. They have to waste at least one night, and you only meet once a month, as you know, coming in front of you. Then they submit an application, what this draft called an administrative site plan. That was supposed to be the expedited site plan. So they've already had their pre-conference. Now they submit their expedited administrative site plan request. Well, the first thing the planning board meets for the first time, they have to decide whether it's complete. And they might decide it's not complete. You want more information. But in the best case scenario, you're going to devote one meeting to deciding whether or not it's complete. Then the chair has to select 2 board members to be a subcommittee to review this application, render a report, and report back to the planning board. That's at least a 3rd planning board meeting, and we're probably beyond that, right? And then having received that report, the planning board as a whole then decides whether or not it wants to approve the administrative site plan, which probably will require yet another meeting for an actual resolution. So it's not an expedited process at all.
Rick, can I just interrupt for 1 second? So how expeditious is this, David? Austin, I'm just thinking out loud, like, no, I'm thinking to myself, like,
No, I agree.
what do you think?
I
In
decided,
terms of our goal, like, this is interesting to me, like, in terms of our goal, like, where does this?
you're always trying like for even the most simple thing, it's probably 6 months at a minimum, sounds like,
Yeah.
right? It'd be nice if we could do it in 3 or 4 months.
You might be able to do it, so let me tell you.
I mean, I'm talking about the one that you were
Oh,
referring.
right,
That's a 6 months plus.
That's right.
And that's one of the, and that's why I kind of.
And that's for administrative.
Oh, no, and that's why, that's why I ignored that and went just looking at what you had done and the existing, because I also think that was too long.
Okay, so you were aware of what they were doing, okay,
I was one of them.
okay.
One voice.
He outed himself.
I am the problem. No. Yes. It got more and more convoluted.
Yeah,
I found it very hard to follow, just
yeah.
understand how the process is going to be.
Yours is much more straightforward, but it didn't make some.
So in my draft, and then one of the things I want to go over with you is there are a lot of, because you cover things in your email.
I may be wrong.
There are a lot of things I need input from you on. In other words, if you're making some statements, well, it requires all that, well, no, not necessarily. Everything I put in bold here, highlighted, I need feedback. But you can determine it, you can establish certain thresholds, or full an aperture. You can widen the aperture, let more people in more readily. You can narrow the aperture and have more control. But you're going to establish certain benchmarks. If you are below, if you are, outside, whatever, I guess inside the aperture it'll go through, where you're below these benchmarks, you would be eligible under my draft for minor site plan review. What is that? It's site plan approval without a public hearing. That's what it is. Minor site plan, if you meet first of all, the eligibility requirements are below certain thresholds, and the board agrees, the board can approve it without even scheduling a public hearing. And, I mean, that could be a 4-month process. Maybe 3 months, well, I'm not going to say that'll happen too often, but you could do it very quickly. So, I mean, my basic personal view of things is you take your time in things that are really important and potentially damaging, and stuff that's not. Don't waste people's time and your own time. Try to get it through. So I did want to get your feedback, from the things that are in my draft, because there's a lot of things for which feedback is needed from the planning board, and presumably then to go to the town board, and it's a recommendation. So you want to do that?
Yes, that's right now.
So you all have I have extra copies, right?
We got it.
Okay.
I have that.
Somebody was nice enough to make comments.
Yeah. As far as I'm going to go through the stuff that we needed. So 109-3 is applicability. And first is A, the residential zoning district. So again, I'm defining what means site plan approval and what doesn't, right? So first, A1, if the use requires a special permit. If the use requires a special permit, and there are not many in the residential district. Your code, let me just see if you can. In the residential A zone, the following are special permit uses. Various kinds of clubs, so private and not-profit organizations can sell clubs. Those are special permit uses. Riding rings, non-commercial basic horseback riding rings. Educational institutions. Nursery schools and daycare centers. 2-family houses. And any use that's of the same general character as any of the uses mentioned above. So I think, for example, when you were reviewing
Sylvester.
I believe that was categorized as similar to, but not exactly an educational institution. And so it was treated as a special permit use. So there are a few special permit uses. Generally, because special permit uses are not residential uses and they're in residential zones, you want some control over them. I don't think you have a lot of them. You're not going to be dealing with problems, but should they go through site plan? Well, at some level, they probably should. There may be some things they could do that are too small, and you have to decide that. But in general, yeah, if you're proposing, let's say, a new school, I'm not talking a public school, like a private nursery school or whatever, in a residential zone, you probably want site plan approval. Let me continue. So now, this one's bolded, A2. any clearing or grading sufficient in size to require a building permit unless it's part of something else. So for example, if you get a building permit to build a house, you don't need site plan approval for the house or the clearing.
Right.
The clearing's with the house. Suppose someone already has a house or already has a facility in the residential, they want to do more clearing. And I bolded it to say, I don't know if you want to do this. And if you do, I need to know where you want to do it.
But what if you just have a residential parcel without a house plan?
And you don't apply for a building permit?
And you just go and clear it.
Do you want to regulate, do you want to have a site plan review over that?
I think
So
so.
that's going to be, that's.
But I thought our charge
Residential
was to
only
look at
commercial.
this under the commercial lens. Only commercial lens. We're not doing residential on
It's
this.
a different,
But that's
The
the
current
first
code line-
category here is residential, so it's residential.
Here's your current site plan.
But the tangent
Well,
there
that's
is like.
This isn't saying residential.
Permit where you're doing kind of a commercial-like activity in a residential area.
It's not saying
So-
a residential use, it's
so-
saying a residential zone.
Zone.
this is a,
We have a lot of businesses in residential zones still, right? We have.
And
most of our small.
in an ideal world, I agree with you. I'd love to have control over what's there, but I don't think that this is where we
do it.
So for example, I'm not determining, you guys do, and the town board have decided. You asked the question, if somebody clears a vacant residential lot, should that be subject to site plan review? It's not my judge, it's not my judge, decide. Do you want it to be subject?
Well, our stipulation was you're not supposed to do residential development, meaning houses. It wasn't that you'd have no jurisdiction in a residential zone.
it's, the whole idea of site plan, my understanding is to target commercial use. It's to deal with commercial use in various.
Well, what if it's a non-conforming use in a residential zone?
Go back to the question, that Gregory is asking here is, what would you do during site plan review? If someone comes in and proposes to clear the residential lot before building a house, you deny it, approve it? I mean, if they deny it, they can come in for a house and building permit, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, you also have, and this will come up with regard, for example, to the yard sale thing. What would you get out of site plan review?
No, we're not gonna be able to.
So anyway, that's, the clearing issue is something that you, the town, has to address. Do you, and if so, in what line do you want to have site plan review for clearing? So that's that. Next thing here, A3, garage, lawn, and port sales. That came out of this. I don't know who wrote this, but they put it subject to site plan review.
Got taken.
What are you gonna do for site plan on a yard sale? I don't know.
Well, I think
But it was in there, that's why.
what they were, I think what part of the concern was, again, if you look at what site plan is, there's lots of vehicles, lots of safety, blah, blah. If you have a long extended thing, then you're gonna have a lot more vehicles, a lot more. That's, I think, was the thinking
Yeah,
behind
that
it.
was the thinking.
But there's also been a history of several properties, I believe, around the island that have stuff always out and it's kind of for sale. So it's become kind of an issue.
Prohibiting to be on a certain time.
Yes.
They're not doing site plan review asks.
Agreed.
You're gonna tell them what they got to do, the parking area. they're not
Agreed.
doing.
So that becomes more of a code
Yes,
issue.
Yeah, okay.
correct.
And so does then the lot clearing before there's a house in a residential neighborhood. That would be
That'd be a code.
Yeah,
a code.
I don't think it would be done
variation.
here now with this.
Yes.
Should be done here. So just to continue, with regard to non-conforming commercial use, you get businesses in residential zones, you can see what I wrote. I will say that in terms of building permit, if they get a building permit to add a bathroom or something inside the building, do we need site plan? No. So it's really a building permit to enlarge the non-conforming, structure, if they get, they can do that. That was the idea there. But in other words, it's a business use in a residential zone. If they do things that would expand it, you probably want site plan review, I would think.
So by business, you're including institutional, commercial, religious.
Special permit use, like an institutional use, like a school or a club, that's probably your special permit use.
And so
Right.
it would be covered.
Right.
The expansion, I want to make sure I understand what you mean by expansion.
Physical expansion.
So actually beyond the envelope of the current space.
You have to do that how you want it, you can do it by envelope, you can do it by gross floor area. there's coverage,
Yeah, because
but that's the parameters that one would need to insert here. And that takes me to the next one, the bottom of the page 5. Well, actually, the bottom is agriculture. Again, I was looking at this, it said that exempted from site plan review were temporary agricultural buildings. That implied that permanent agricultural buildings were going to be subject to site plan review. So I just threw in greater than 500 square feet. Maybe you think that's too high, that's too low. Maybe you want no site plan review of agricultural buildings. But we're not, wherever I highlighted, it's like, I need advice.
if regardless of whether it's agriculture or not, wouldn't it be, it'd be a commercial thing, and they'd be expanding the building envelope if the build.
So.
But Rick,
You want to be, let's use what B for the second.
Rick, is it possible to give an example that maybe
in a
you
resident.
experienced from East Hampton, or like, I need a tangible example here, like.
Well, East Hampton, for example, regulates agriculture, it doesn't require site plan review for agricultural buildings above a certain size.
No, but like an actual example, like here was business, parties, and they did, I don't know, I mean,
business
I need an actual example of something that somebody tried to do and it.
Meaning
triggered site
agricultural
plan
buildings,
review.
like, you're talking about like a barn? What's an agricultural
Yeah,
building?
they do site plan review for above a certain size.
Right, what is it, define an agricultural building?
Anything from farmsteads are usually too small.
I was thinking of
To barn,
farmstead, but-
barn, too.
Okay, that's,
Again, this is in a residential zone.
yeah, this is only in the residential zone we're talking about.
Well, in East Hampton, all the agricultural stuff is in residential zones.
I know, I'm saying, this is about it.
Well, only through A, on the first page.
I know.
Subsection A is in residential.
The reality is we have very few agricultural
I know,
areas that are.
but it was covered in the
If that's the case, I think the 500 square foot thing is reasonable.
Yeah, it's basically, we're already saying you can do a small business in your residential area, blah, blah, blah. But it's when it gets to reach a certain size.
Are you guys gonna try to decide on those sizes today? Are you gonna provide feedback? You wanna?
I thought we did provide feedback. I thought that's what all these
Well,
notes were.
feedback would be
We did,
useful
yeah.
to me in refining, in.
We need consensus and feedback, because
Yeah,
there's multiple
consensus.
versions, multiple opinions. That's the problem.
Yeah. I mean, on the first page, clearing and grading of land, do you want that to be subject to site plan? This is A2.
I think we said no.
So the answer is no, no site, no.
Well, I mean, there were two issues, because
I still don't say no.
John, you-
No, you say no, but.
you made the point that chapter 62 addresses excavations, which is true, and I think it is redundant to add it in this code. But 62 doesn't really address clearing.
But I thought that we understood both remit from the town board and otherwise, that was beyond the scope of what we were looking at. I would ideally, and we'll get to it, like to keep that for the commercial side, because I think it's a good progress to start that, and residential hopefully addressed elsewhere in a code in the future, but
But let's not confuse residential uses and residential zoning
That's the
areas.
point, though. So
Yeah.
he's talking about residential where there's.
Commercial and a residential, basically.
Non-conforming,
Ah.
like, Ram's Head Inn would be an example,
Mm-hmm.
right? So just picture
So you
that.
might capture that in a different way. In other words, that might be on the expansion of non-conforming use.
All right.
But I think the consensus I'm getting from A2 is general residential, not for commercial use in the residential zone, you don't want site plan review.
No.
Correct.
Got that.
But for commercial use, yeah, maybe.
5 was the agricultural building.
Okay.
You want to deal with it? Again, it was in
I think-
the draft.
I think 500 is a reasonable
I
size.
think it's fine. There won't be very many, if any.
I don't want to review a,
It'll be an exciting.
I don't want to review a
I
form
have a
thing.
question about that. Could we expand it so that, since we have very few agricultural buildings, we're not really saying anything about warehouse buildings or industrial storage facilities?
Well, those inherently have to be. These are only, basically, agriculture is getting an out at less than 500. Everything else has a building permit, we'll be covering it.
So that will be
Captured,
covered.
it's
in-
captured.
It's an agricultural warehouse and bigger than 500 square feet, it would need site plan.
Okay.
But if it's any other kind of warehouse at less than that even, then if it's in a commercial zone while they're doing business and they're changing things.
Okay.
It'll go through site plan.
Or just wanted
It's
to,
giving an out to the smaller agricultural.
So now we transfer into the business zone, which is where you accommodate in site plan.
So excited to be here.
So the first part is pretty straightforward. You need a building permit to erect or construct, that's new building construction.
Yep.
Or to move or enlarge an existing commercial building, site plan review. Now, you might have for the building, for the enlargement, and this comes down to B4, is it B4? Yeah, B4 in red. You might want to have a cutoff, maybe below a certain size you don't want site plan review. I don't know if you want to make that full now, but you could have a cutoff. You could have something that says, we're going to make you go through site plan review if you're above this. Below that, don't get a building permit.
It's so hard because it's always about the size of the expansion is dependent upon the lot size. So again, it might be a small change size, but it has a bigger impact because it's on a smaller lot.
This draft here used either a fixed number, I think it
Like
used
a
500,
percentage.
or percentage of coverage, which is effectively tied to your lot size.
Yeah, that's the only reason I would worry about putting in a hard number is because of
You
that.
do it as a percentage.
I think percentage.
'Cause I think it'd be fine, if you're doing like 10%, again, I don't know what the right percentage is, but it's also part of the problem. It's like figuring out,
you can also do a number and a percentage with whatever is greater.
Right, you could do below a certain percent, whatever, whichever smaller.
over 100 square feet or,
Again, I think this draft, they were using a 10%, I forget what the 10% was tied in, I think it was coverage,
I think it's coverage, I can't remember.
or 500
Block
square
most
feet
of
of coverage. I think it's, hold on.
That's under minor site plan lot coverage.
Remember, this right now is exempting it from site, we're talking about an exemption, a complete exemption from site plan review.
You don't have to go in the door.
Separately, you can have cutoffs for.
And who makes that, how is that call inherently made? It has to come to us to make
Well,
it,
the way
right?
I've structured this, first of all, one other thing I forgot to mention, so this new law would have site plan review undertaken not by the town board, but by the planning board. And the initial submission comes into the building inspector, for the building inspector just to do, not to decide whether or not site plan review.
Just go by
I don't
the,
like that at all, but for him to judge, first of all, does it meet zoning?
yeah,
Does it meet the state building code? There's certain basic fundamental requirements the building inspector's got to look at before he ships it off. If they come in with something that doesn't even meet zoning,
Yeah.
or it's non-compliant with the building code, he might ship it back and say, hey, you're not meeting the building code, redo it. But once the building inspector says it's okay for review, then it comes to play.
and that would be criteria, if we said, if it's 10% or 50, whatever the thing is, they could use that criteria to decide, oh, you're only doing that much. So
Correct, well, they're right, the building inspector, that's right, the building
That would be the-
inspector, let me find what they had, what they have this, they had a threshold.
You want to
All right,
say,
here it is,
you want to say I did it.
Here it is.
Fine.
They use 3 different thresholds. They use lot coverage, floor area, and footprint. Choose one of them, more than that. But in all those cases, the lot coverage or the floor area, I guess gross floor area of the building, first and second floor, or the footprint, which is, that, which is kind of coverage. The threshold they used was 10% of, I guess, of the existing building, not tied to lot area. 10% of, if you weren't increasing the existing building by more than 10% or 500 square feet, whichever is less. If you are below those thresholds, both thresholds, you don't need site plan.
So if you have a 3,000 square foot thing,
You could go up
300
by
feet.
300 square feet.
that's less than the 500.
Less, yeah.
Thoughts on that? What you just said, to 300 square foot, you're going less than 300 more square feet exempt?
I would say it could be, yeah. That should
Right.
be exempt. It's pretty small.
Greg?
Yeah, it's like if you add a small addition or something, and
I think the question is, what's the impact of the increase?
okay,
And if the impact results in 5 more parking spaces or whatever the requirement, then or how much more traffic will it generate, then I think it's a site planning issue. If it's just a 300 square foot bump or a 500 square foot
So
bump.
inherently, then you couldn't just put it by a size criteria, and we shouldn't have anything in there. It has to go through us because we have to make an impact.
You could also make that be the threshold for minor site plan. They do have to submit to you then, but if you find that they meet these criteria, they don't have to have a public hearing. You can approve them.
That's the right answer.
So the question is, complete exemption from site plan review, minor site plan review with no hearing, or full site plan review, public hearing.
So I think that we should do the size thing based on enables minor.
Correct.
If that's the only, there'd be other criteria, but that'd be one. Versus just.
I'll go for that.
Yeah. So it does mean that the inspector will say, okay, you're here, you might be minor, but it has to go.
You gotta go to the planning board.
No, it's us actually still. We still have to determine minor.
We determine minor, but they're going to give them hints that it might be minor because they're going to look at the criteria, right?
Because frankly, most of the time, I'm guessing, you'll get used to this, and if it's below the threshold, 99% to 90% of the time, you're gonna look at minor site plan.
But you have to go to one. You have to go at least to a meeting, bring your stuff.
Okay, so anyway, business commercial stuff. So 4 was kind of where I was gonna, increases occupancy limits or site parking requirements.
Yeah.
The occupancy limit thing was really tied to like site parking requirements. So the real issue with these, do you want to exempt them below a certain size? Because remember, if it's even a small addition could require additional parking. If you don't go through site plan, then you don't review either the building or the parking. It might be safer to do that than to minor site plan.
I think it should go through minor. I think it should get an eye on it, right? Which is what the minor site plan really is. It's like just to make sure there's nothing else hiding under the covers, and it also shows that. But I think the key thing is we have to make sure we're really efficient on the minor site plan. So it incentivizes.
So now let me jump to one that could be controversial. This is 5, again, we're business and restricted business zones. All clearing and grading. Again, I highlighted this. I'm not saying what you should do. I'm just throwing it out there. Clearing grading or clearing and grading above a certain length.
This is commercial. This is
commercial.
Yeah.
In a commercial zone doing any clearing and grading. Currently, in the current code, correct me if I'm wrong, the building inspector can approve clearing and grading before it goes through anything else, if I remember correctly.
That's what I think we should review.
What'd you say?
It's there is no clearing, but they can do the excavation and all that kind of stuff, I guess.
Right now, there's no clearing, which means anybody can clear whenever they want.
Correct.
Yes.
I think setting a limit is reasonable. I vote for 10,000 feet and any tree over 12 inches. I don't know, it's sort of arbitrary, but
There needs to be something.
Well, I put a whole framework in there. I don't know if you clicked on it, that you could see the whole framework regarding trees.
I saw something.
See it, and you'd have to click on the comment and do more. I've had a lot of conversations with the board about tree codes. They haven't been in there yet with all the other things they're addressing. But that's why it's a tangled web, is that, you can't just say clearing. So you have to start defining all these things to actually have control over it. And so I put it in there, there's things, there is, and I'll just kind of briefly, it is basically saying you use a term substantially alter, and that becomes a defined term, because so people don't go in and just start destroying tree.
Better off with number. Substantially alter is such a fudge term.
It's a defined term. You'd have to go in and read it and whatever. So fine, just before you get there,
It's a different
there,
term.
I'd rather use a percentage, because then it becomes objective. Substantially
So
alter.
you're jumping into, rather than hearing the kind of
Right.
the framework. So if you just bear with me, and you can go over it later. It is saying that you can't substantially alter more than, or the lesser of, X number of trees or X percentage of existing trees. Then you define substantially alter as cutting, pruning in excess of normal, customary, so that people can't go in and just start destroy it, but they didn't take down the whole tree, essentially.
I did see.
Right?
I did see that.
So, so you start to have more control. You define and you say that you're defining, you can't substantially alter large trees. So you put a size on the trees that they can't touch without permission. Then you say there are exemptions for dead and dying or an emergency as long as it's determined by an arborist. And then, then there has to be a standard. So, right, I mean, which is you're trying to maintain X percentage of existing large trees on the property unless it reasonably interferes with the ability to conduct necessary business activities and no practical alternatives exist. So it tries to create a framework where you have a standard, you have a percentage you're trying to keep, and et cetera, et cetera. So you're trying to hit all the bases so that it's not, because people play games, right? So you can't just say clearing, I left one tree, I didn't clear, all those kinds of things. So it builds a framework that covers the kind of whole thing.
So can I just ask a question? It seems to me that all of that verbiage basically requires that a tree and topo survey be submitted prior to any kind of approval. And you can't do it just with verbiage. A tree and topo survey would have to be done. And then within your verbiage, you would have to clarify, as David pointed out, any tree with a diameter exceeding, say, 8 inches at the 3-foot level. It has to be very.
It's essentially in there. What it is that if you are coming up against, I'm not saying this is the golden rule, but I've been in a lot of conversations, and so what I'm trying to emphasize is that this is not just throw in you're not allowed to clear or whatever. You actually have to create in standard exceptions. You have to kind of address it at multiple levels. With that, if you're coming beyond a given threshold, you would then have to come and say, here is where I have large trees on the property. This is what I want to cut.
I don't think that you can make it like a certain threshold. If you are doing clearing, you'll have to submit a tree and topo survey.
But what is clearing? So you have to define clearing. So clearing would.
You're creating a whole new section of code.
Yeah.
You can't shove a clearing code into site plan review.
Yeah.
That is a very separate legislation. So try to stay focused on the site plan. The tree clearing, am I correct? The tree clearing is not necessarily something that site plan review is going to have control over.
Well, I'll say this, we're not likely to resolve that tonight, because that is such a common.
No, I mean, I said this at the last meeting of, look, I'm a tree hugger. I think it's great to do it. I said, ask the town board, because I bet you the town board is going to say, no, we don't want to deal with that, whatever. We can still make the suggestion if we feel strongly, but it's not a minor thing that, you just kind of throw in there. It has to be very thoughtful and controlled. Now,
you're saying it would have to be a code revision with.
Well, to the extent that Sean is talking about, yes, it would have to probably be a new chapter of code if you're going to regulate the size and diameter of trees. Right now, what you're allowed to, the area you're allowed to clear, the area that has to remain permeable versus hardened is all outlined in your zoning code. So right now, for these businesses, they have to apply the zoning code for the district that they're in to whatever project they're planning on doing. So that would give you the amount of hardscape versus the amount of permeable surface. That's what's regulated right now. So, when it comes to screening and things like that, we can make recommendations on, specimen trees that we would like them to keep because it keeps the character of that area. But right now, our code doesn't say, you're not allowed to clear. So, you're working off of the zoning rules for the district that you're working in. So.
But what protection does the zoning buffers have right now? What are the protections heading on?
No, it doesn't really protect against clearing.
That's what I'm saying. Well, that's what I'm asking. There is nothing.
It doesn't protect against clearing because you can have hardscapes.
What I'm saying is that's probably where it belongs. Is more there than in the site.
Zoning, yes.
Right.
Yes, it's a zoning
I would tell
issue.
you.
Yes.
From a
So how do we
You wanted to
make a
cover more than just-
recommendation that while we cannot necessarily put it within site plan review, that so that it doesn't get lost in the weeds, that we recommend that something be studied to work in tandem with what we are producing. A multi-layered approach so that everything is,
So we put that in our recommendation to the town board, because that's where this is gonna go, and we're going with it.
This,
Make it part of it.
the type of thing that I just discussed didn't just come out of my, head, quickly. It is because we've been discussing this
with the town board.
with town board, with people that are interested for 2 years, right?
So
And
then
the town board,
to incorporate it.
right? And so I think the town board is generally supportive of addressing this. It's just not on the top of their priority list with all the other stuff. So I think we can say we believe it is an important part of it and we would like to see them address it. I can tell you that it's not going to run in tandem with this so that we feel, oh, this got passed and their tree
Julia,
code is coming, right behind it. It's
Maybe
just-
it goes as an addendum to our recommendations on the site plan review.
Put it in this section, just the concept of what, I was just thinking like in terms of screening, well, like screening is important because if you like, he's just like Greg was mentioning the 114 corridor.
Right.
Walter did that, right? We had
And
some
that's
screening.
something that you can put into the site.
But that would be example, like,
plan review.
right, I'm saying like, what's to stop the applicant to like pulling out all the trees and saying, well,
And then put a hedge
I'm
up,
putting
and they've
in,
been screened.
ornamentals and hey, there's my hedge and there's my screening.
Yeah,
There was
there's
actually
nothing-
something good there, like that kind of thing.
I mean,
There's nothing
So
to stop
screening,
them.
it might fall under some screening recommendations.
Yeah, but yeah, so I guess Sean was saying, it is a bigger thing. So, right, when you're doing construction, there are all these different requirements, right? You have to do propane tanks, right? Those go underground. You've got dry wells, those have to go underground. You've got utilities. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you're gonna dig up and tear up. So to say you're not allowed to clear here, here, and here, where maybe those are the only places where your required dry wells can get cited because of your well setback.
Right, but that's an example, can I just add that that's an example what Sean was just describing, like septic is a great example, for example. But often you don't have a choice. Trees have to come out because you have to put your IA and that's dictated by the well, hence you're stuck with, you may have to uproot some, right? But I'm just wondering, why do we all get a little bit like squeamish whenever we mention about like just a little bit more caution about how we're deciding to clear something on commercial? So why is it that it can't be considered here? I'm just.
No, you can, but I'm just saying it fits in a different code, not necessarily site plan code. By the time you're getting a site plan review application, it's done. Most of this is a conversion of an existing property. It's not a vacant lot for the most part.
But I mean, can I just?
Hence I said
Let's put it
the
in
biggest
screening.
issue is really residential, but I don't know how many
we're not doing that.
commercial lots are around that this is still
Let
going
me
to have
ask
an
a
impact.
specific question about an example. Is that acceptable to cite an example? So one of our primary intersections occurs at 114 and 114 at the entrance to Sylvester Manor, where IGA is on one side of the intersection and White Oak Nursery is on the other side. IGA has no landscaping to speak of, no screening, no trees. I mean, it's a desert. Okay, that's the kind of thing that moving forward, I think we'd like to mitigate. On the other side is a landscape business which 6 months of the year looks like a bomb site. And that is a great example of a clearing that, there's nothing to prevent them from having cleared the way it's done. And, there are trees sort of partially falling out of the forest. And it's, to me, that's what we should be trying to mitigate.
You're not going to prevent the clearing, but I would like to think that if IGA came in front of us today for a new build, we would require screening. It wouldn't be a vacant, whatever. So some of that's historical and people didn't think of it. And you know,
It's also
and
line of
address it,
sight
but.
at the intersection. So you're not gonna want a whole like head.
Yeah, you gotta see traffic
There are
and whatever,
ways to
there's a,
do- There are ways to deal with
Yes.
all of this. And, you know, and for the, I don't understand why we can't do any, if we're talking about clearing, why what's happening across the street isn't something that is an example of what doesn't work well.
And you, by across the street, you mean over there?
At White Oak.
Oh, White Oak.
no, but that's true there. That's true there.
They've done massive grading, regrading and clearing, which is fine in the summer when it's fully, you know, it's filled with trees.
Well, the reason why they do the grading is so they can do that in the summer. So it's like, it's.
I understand,
Business.
Dave, I understand the reason, but the result is a disaster, frankly.
So the balance is in that case, we would have done screening had it come forth and, you know, it's done already, but yeah.
It's done already,
Screening.
but it's an
Screening would have been-
example of what I think is a problem. That's why I'm bringing it up. And it occurs at one of our primary intersections. And David brought up the idea of, you know, the importance of small businesses being able to operate in Shelter Island. Well, what Rick said is, I think, absolutely correct. One of the things we have to sell is our uniqueness and beauty. And if that is what we sell, just kind of devastation. I don't think that's a great.
Our entire central corridor has a problem. The Class B, B1, which is different, that's another more detailed, that's like, there's very specific rules about that. And that currently is probably the area that needs the most work, right? Something has to happen there or we're gonna have
I guess I'm just trying to figure out on screening, how to avoid a situation where you have natural existing screening and what's to stop the commercial owner from just
it's gonna happen before it gets to us.
ripping out?
Pre-site plan, that's the point.
But don't they need a site plan review for the building permit?
Before they do a burning permit, they'll go and clear. And then they'll go in for it's like, that's the problem. That's why it has to be done at a higher level, at the zoning level. They can't just do it. That's why it doesn't work.
One thing I do say in here is if you're subject to site plan review, you gotta get your approval first before you commence the work. That's.
Oh, so
Yeah, but they'll do it way before that. That's the problem. It's a cart.
Well, yeah, it's gotta be clear whether or not, because if it's not clear whether you need site plan review, you should have people go and do stuff. So anyway, can I bring back?
I think you should, sorry, before, I think you could think about it. I think the only, as Meg suggested, is to look whether within screening you can add some language that
That's what I was asking,
encourages maintaining the existing
if there is anything.
vegetation. Encouraging using the existing vegetation rather than creating, you know, new vegetation or something along, you know, those lines, you know.
Let me just, this is the most important part of it. We're going right now, this, you know, what's the jurisdiction. I do want to run quickly through this, but let me just finish still here under B, this is districts. 2 and 6. 2 throws out there, again, it's bold, so this is something I'm looking for feedback on. If a change in use increases site parking requirements or requires approval of the wastewater disposal system by the health department. The second part of it, not sure what, if it needs health department approval, you get health department approval, right? Not sure we need site plan approval, that's my view.
The parking requirements.
I don't think
The
that,
parking requirements, look at 2 and look at 6, and this is what I would throw out to you. If you make a change to the use of the building that increases the occupancy, and then under your code, and I don't know exactly under the zoning code when this trips in, but if you do something that requires a larger parking lot, and you have to put in a larger parking lot, then maybe subject to this 10% coverage thing, it seems to me the parking lot expansion should require site plan.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so we could take 2 and 6 and just make them into 6.
Yes.
Right? Because really, the change in occupancy really has to do with parking.
Well, there's the parking side, but there's also the change of category, there's the part of the category of permitted or special permit use. So there's that zoning change separately. The first part of 2. The first part of 2. you want to keep,
First, I
right?
was talking about the zoning change, yeah.
Any change,
Oh, okay.
right? It's the highlighted part that essentially you could merge into 6, which is.
Well, I guess it departs, in other words, site plan review is really about external manifestation of things. It's possible that you might be able to get permit, it's usually by the town board, special permit for change of use, town board or zoning board.
Yeah, it's the reason why I think it was in here was because the zoning board says, yes, you can do this change of use, but the idea is to go to site plan to make sure that change of use doesn't have an impact on like the number of cars that are gonna be there. So basically to do the site planning part of it was, I think.
Yeah, so if you're enlarging the building as part of the change of use, if you need more parking as part of the change of use, those should go through site plan. If you change the use, I don't know how, but if you change the use of a building, you have nursery schools and daycare centers, but from nursery school to daycare center, and outside it doesn't change anything, and it doesn't, then you don't need site plan review.
So I would disagree a little bit because again, I think the thinking was not as nursery to school, because those are very similar businesses, but dramatically different businesses that may have dramatically different parking requirements. And maybe it was done previously where they gave them a break on parking because it didn't need it. But this new thing, there's gonna be all these cars now. And that's why, and it isn't necessarily that there's more expansion of parking yet, because they don't know, because they think they're just doing change of use.
David, how about if Walter Richards landscaping business, which is a landscaping business, and just parks his employees there, so he sold it, now it's become a restaurant, and they don't have enough parking. And they come back to say, now we're a restaurant, we used to be a landscaping business.
I think what we're trying to target here was, they may come back and go, we're gonna change this use, oh, but we're not gonna change our park, we don't have to. Even though they really kind of do for the business, and that was what this was trying to trigger, because again, it's what determines they need more parking currently is construction or expansion of space. But it may be because of
change of use. So yeah, let me see, so in 2, I think what David's saying is, if you read 2, we get into the area I bolded. After the words parking requirements, stop there. Because beyond the which is approval of the health department, we don't care about that, I don't think. You don't need site plan review.
Yeah, I would strike, you're right, after
So
the
stop
word.
at parking requirements, period.
Yeah, and I think it's, what you're trying to do is trying to make it all into one, and I think it still needs to have it be in both places
Yeah, I get it.
because
So
of that.
2 and 6 separate.
Yeah.
Okay. One more one, C, because David mentioned this in the email. So this is something I introduced that's new. It does come from the town code. In every zoning district, an activity or use made subject to site plan review is a condition or of any permission or by another landlord. So in East Hampton, it has occurred very rarely, either as a planning board or conditional planning board approval, or it could as a conditional zoning board approval. Frankly, it almost never occurs. But it gives you one tool. Let's just say that you have a very difficult subdivision. And one of those lots, I'm not mentioning any of our existing subdivisions, but the planning board says, we really wish we could have some sort of, when they go to build on this one lot, this could be a difficult lot. We're creating it, but it'd be a difficult lot. We'd feel more comfortable if we had site plan review over that lot when it's built on.
Could you put that as a covenant?
Well, you have to give yourself the authority to do it first. In other words, the idea would be to give the planning board, if the planning board is the one with site plan authority, for another board, could be the town board, if they're giving a permit to something, could be the zoning board, a condition of a variance, could be the planning board, condition of a subdivision, or site planning, you want something, whatever. You could impose a requirement that further work on a particular property needs to go see the planning board. Don't have to, and it's rarely gonna come up, it may never come up, but if you do, it's one more tool in the toolbox, if you had a particularly sensitive or difficult piece of property. And that's why I put it in there. So it's not automatic. It requires it requires a reviewing agency to say, we want to subject something that we're approving now to site plan review in the future.
Yeah, I think what I was concerned about, I expressed, is because it is discretionary.
It is by the reviewing board.
Right, and so it gets into that kind of like, do we want to give that kind of discretion? That was my only, again, it goes to the planning board, and then we could decide, oh, it's minor, and so it goes to the simple, fast way. But that was my concern about it.
Either you're going to make it discretionary, or you're going to be very specific and say so many feet of this and so many trees, which I don't
Well, no,
feel like we have the
well,
appetite.
again,
So,
right, currently, if they go and decide you subdivide something and this property, and they're gonna go now do commercial stuff on it, if it's commercial, that doesn't need, it's gonna go, it's gonna come in a site plan.
Code is gonna.
Right, right, so it's one of those, I was trying to think through my mind of the when would you be doing this in another board? Any local agency approval, you know, any other, I'm trying to think about other approvals that existed and why, how could it not already have to go to site plan for some, if it's commercial?
Anyway, I just throw it in there. It's in the East Hampton Code. It's almost never utilized, but it does exist. You can decide whether you want it or you don't want it.
I'd be really interested in understanding when it was used.
You know, I'd have to go back. I haven't seen it used for a long, long time.
And that's why, so does it, so do we need it? It's like, somebody's like, let's put in more code just because code is good. You know, that's.
Fair question. Let me just go quick through the rest of this, because I just want you to understand what else is in here. So 109-4, you can see it says review authorized approval. Basically, you have to go through site plan review. You got to get it, when you get a site plan approval, you have to go get a building permit for most things. And then the building permit authorizes you to do the work. You're not allowed to do the work before you get a building permit. That was, you know, the result of your site plan. And when a certificate of it, when you finish the work and you've completed everything, then you can apply for a certificate of occupancy. Sometimes if you get into an issue of like paving a parking lot in the dead of winter or installing landscaping in the dead of winter, you can't do those things. So you could go to the town board, I think it's the town board, and if they take an undertaking of security, you could, in fact, it's not like getting a temporary CFO. You could get a conditional CFO. You could get a CFO, the town's holding security to make sure that you finish the work you couldn't do.
Yeah, we did.
All right? 109-5 is exceptions. The only really meaningful exception there is A, this is not site plan review for any of these things, is not is not triggered by ordinary repair or maintenance of existing structures or uses. Existing uses, that's 109-6. It doesn't change existing uses. You know, the White Oak Landscaping Company that you're talking about, for example. If they complete everything that they did, or, you know, Greg talked about, and they have their, you know, their sites there, they would see it, oh, they exist. They're grandfathered. They don't go through site plan unless they do something new that would have a new trigger for site plan review. The procedure, 109-7, preliminary site plan application. If you've want it, you can go. It's discretionary with the applicant. So if you have a fairly simple site plan application and you don't really think you need the benefit of preliminary review, just submit submit site plan application. If it's a more complicated project, maybe you do want to get an initial review by the board, and so the submission requirements are much easier on the preliminary site plan review, and you go through it. But that's an option by the applicant. The required site plan elements, this comes out of an appendix in your existing chapter 109. All these requirements for submission, if you don't like any of them, tell them to strike them out, but they're pretty much coming out of your own code.
The 1097, which is the preliminary site plan, that's, because you don't have minor site plan, right? You have preliminary site plan?
Yeah, so there is a waiver provision in here. Actually, look at B. The site plan, so subsection B, required site plan elements. The site plan shall include the elements listed or any, a very long list, unless one or more of these elements are waived by the planning board upon request of the applicant and for due cause shown. So there's an out. If somebody looks like, God, I guess to all this, yeah, well, I'm doing this, I'm building a shed on the property, it's 501 square feet, so I need site plan or whatever. Can you wait, can I not do this or that? And the board, in its discretion, for good cause shown, can say, yeah, we don't need topography, 2 foot concrete, whatever. You know, it's a flat site.
This is the,
You don't have to subject the applicant. I had an application it's actually for a church in Amagansett. And the planning department, the site plan chapter said, have the site plan show the circulation within the parking lot. Well, the parking lot was an aisle going in and there's parking on either side. You turn around and go out. What do you want me to put in the site plan? An arrow in and an arrow back out? You know, common sense. So, you know, you can use common sense.
Bring common sense into it.
I have one comment about the legal data.
Yeah.
Name and address of the owner. More and more frequently, the owner is an LLC.
That's what you get then.
Are we, can we ask who the members are?
I don't think you're allowed to.
No.
I think New York State now can find out, but I don't think that information is publicly now.
No, but just as we get on our wetlands, we often have the owner's names on the applications.
Well, someone has to sign the application. So let's say it's an LLC. Typically, it's signed by a member of the LLC.
Or the attorney representing them?
Well, then you authorize to sign by the LLC. Somebody really trying to preserve their privacy, they can set up in the operating agreement, they can appoint a manager. And the manager may not be a member of the LLC, and you can sign as the manager, and you still don't know the real owner. But most people don't do that. So the typical LLC, you'll actually have somebody's name on it that's really a member of the LLC. But if they want to hide it, other than the state of New York Department of Taxation or whatever, yeah, they can hide it, their identity.
So we can't ask.
We can ask, just won't get an answer.
Well, you can ask. Let's say we're not going to tell you.
Also shouldn't impact your review.
They're not obligated to, yeah, and it cannot impact your.
Correct. So,
And if you ask
Well,
that.
actually, it's best to not know. It
Yeah,
makes it
if you
more.
ask and they don't tell you, they will then
Makes it more
sue you later if you say no. So don't ask.
The only reason I'm saying is that it seems that on the ones we get, we just always have the applicant's name. I don't know.
No, there's actually some that don't. Some are like signed by, or you'll see they're actually not being.
Well, I don't know how your form is set up, but, usually you want an owner's name on there, so, or the owner's representative. That's not usually.
Owner representatives will get often.
Well, again, if it's LLC, they can appoint a managing member.
Exactly.
Anyway, just want to point out, if you continue down still on 109-7, we're still under the procedure, but you're on the third page. Formal site plan procedure, let me just read this. An application for formal site plan approval, this is not for the optional preliminary site plan review, shall be submitted with the appropriate review to the building inspector. He shall review the same for prima facie completeness. Does it seem to comply with what the code requirements are to submit it? Conforming with the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention Building Code and conforming with Chapter 133. Does that meet zoning? Are they meeting the setbacks on the new building? He has 21 days after receipt of the application to certify whether or not it meets the following elements. If it does, he certifies it, and then the application, I guess, that is made to you. I think that's how I did it. So that's then.
It goes to the clerk, right? It's all in.
The clerk's, they don't have the clerk involved. It's just going to the building inspector and then to you.
I thought everything goes to the clerk.
it goes to the clerk, planning town.
Yeah.
I mean.
Clerk of the planning board.
Yeah, they wouldn't submit to each individual
town.
member, it would go to the clerk and she would distribute it.
So then, D, initial planning board review upon receipt of the certification. I have to read about, I forget if you received the site plan from, I think you received it from him with his certification. I think that's how I wrote it. So then you do your review, you have to determine if it's complete, that's the first thing you always do. Then you have to make a secret determination. You could have an application that was complete technically under the code, but you might say, this is such a big application, we want to require a DEIS. And if you require the Drummond Liveback statement, it's not complete until you accept the DEIS. So that's all under secret. And then finally, once it's complete, or if you accepted a DIS at the end of the DIS process, you schedule a public hearing. And you have to hold the public hearing within 62 days after you determine it was complete. And after the public hearing is closed, you have 62 days in which to render a decision. That's the basic. Now, minor site plan is 109-8. I'm going to use what you told me earlier, go back and revise this, but we're going to have certain thresholds. And you're eligible for minor site plan review below these thresholds. Then you can adjust the thresholds, the town board can change them, whatever you want to do. But we'll have thresholds. There are some standards to review. If you look at G, the planning board has to find that in waiving a public hearing, it wouldn't be deleterious to the public interest because it looks at several things, and you can see them listed under G 1 through 5. By the way, H is public controversy.
Yeah.
You also have to have, like, if there is a lot of public controversy, you gotta have a hearing. You still.
You need to have a public.
109-9 is the standards for review of a site plan. If you go through any site, even the minor site plan technically, you would look at the standards for review. Is it compatible with the site? How is access? Does it have sufficient parking? All of those normal things. streetscape, is it properly screened or otherwise landscape? I had highlighted a lot of stuff in yellow under lighting. I don't know how intense you get on lighting or want to be on lighting.
We have lighting code separately.
I think I saw that in your code, so I don't know whether E is necessary or, it's still under site plan review, so you still have a planning board overseeing things. But that's what I highlighted there. I'll probably need some feedback on that.
Yeah, before I think we took it out because we had this whole other lighting code.
Other things?
Yeah.
I think referencing,
You might want to incorporate it within site plan, I don't know.
I'd say either incorporate or definitely refer to it.
Yeah. So 109-10 is pretty straightforward, effective approval, you should go get a building permit, you can do what you got approved for. 109-11, validity of approval, I made this, I think I did, I haven't seen the code right now, it's valid for 2 years, I think I made the code right now.
That's
I wouldn't do less than that. I know a lot of your timeframes in your codes are very.
way too tight. Yeah.
Planning board extensions or, yeah.
People they gotta go get health department approval, it takes time.
takes a year.
Faster.
So anyway, the biggest thing was the first part of it, which is what's subject to site plan review. Also, one last thing on the whole document, I just pointed out they changed it. The blue things I changed after I sent you the original draft. Penalties, I set the penalty at between $500 and $1,000 in monetary fine for imprisonment not to exceed 15 days. If you're subject to imprisonment, not that anyone goes to jail for site plan violation, but technically you could. The real significance is of you put in a penalty of imprisonment, potential imprisonment, more than 15 days, then it's a misdemeanor.
Oh, yeah.
And it could be on someone's record, and then they're gonna fight like hell because they don't want it on their record.
Don't answer that.
15 days or less is only a violation. Even if you have to spend 2 weeks in jail, it's only a violation, sir. It's on your record, but you didn't spend 2 weeks in jail.
We have beautiful.
The public hearing notification stuff, and I made this comment before, I think it's not enough time. Public hearing advertised 10 days in advance.
Oh, so David, I spoke to the town clerk about
We
that.
locked into
and,
those things.
Basically, wetlands is 30 days, docks are usually 30 days. Site plan has always been 10. But it says unless written otherwise in the New York General Municipal Law, you can change it to whatever. So the minimum is 5, but you can go more than 10. 30 days might be better. That was input from our own town clerk.
Yeah.
Well, remember something though, you're subject, Shelter Island report is weekly, right?
Sorry, what?
Shelter report is weekly.
Yeah, it's a weekly
So
thing.
if you publish it, you get a report. So if you require 30 days,
That's,
you can't hold the hearing for 2 months. Right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. So you're slowing things
And
down.
remember something too. I guess I guess you wouldn't hold the hearing presumably within 62 days, but a hearing on a complete application by law is supposed to occur within 62 days of being deemed complete.
Yep.
Now, the only default on that is in subdivisions and site plans, there's really no penalty. But in a subdivision, if you miss the state statutory deadlines, the applicant's entitled to demand default approval.
Yep.
Always have to keep that in mind in subdivisions.
If you will make it 20.
Can I just reiterate, which is the last comment that I made in there around penalties, is that, we have a history here in Shelter Island of not having adequate deterrence and not having fees codified. And then they go to the court and the court is lenient or dismissive or whatever. So people do whatever they want to do. And so I know last time we threw around $5,000, $10,000, type thing, which I think is warranted. Personally, I believe that we should use the opportunity to start the second leg of that, which is anyone who facilitates, breaking the code, so that we have the ability to fine. You don't have to, but you can fine a contractor if they're knowingly facilitating and they know that they're not supposed to be doing it. Because that's the only way.
How do you prove that? That's a good question.
Well, I mean,
Some municipalities they do try to penalize.
it's the only way you're going to stop, you're going to start to
Okay.
stop. And I think you're going to have to use your discretion if it's like a, silly little thing of like, how can this guy possibly know or whatever. But if it's a big builder who's just, he doesn't care and he's just, following it, you can. And then lastly, I said, putting in a failure to comply with a cease and desist or, whatever, it should, like daily fines. And if you don't put that kind of stuff in the code, then we don't have the ability to actually deter the
The
behavior.
first thing I would strengthen though would be in the zoning code, because a lot of stuff is gonna, even this will still run through zoning, getting the building permit and see. So I would put that in the recommendation, I guess, to the town board.
Yeah.
Matt had thrown out, I think you were talking about the lengthy, the schedule, the public hearing notice, Matt,
And that was my comment also.
Those David's.
if you wanted, so you wanted to increase beyond 10?
Well, it was the duration. I mean, I think 15 is even better because then you get 2 weeks of.
Weeks,
So,
yeah,
so
that's enough, that should be.
when when did the newspaper require you to send something in, they could?
Friday.
By Friday.
Yeah, when they publish it?
Thursday.
So to be following Thursday, you have to be the Friday.
I think the 200 feet is, for certified mail is just an inadequate distance. I don't know if that's tied in with
200 feet
something.
to like neighbors, you mean? Oh, for the letters?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in AA zoning, that's one neighbor on either side, which is not a lot.
But you're double
It's
zoning.
about the immediate impact of the project on.
Well, if you live on a street and there's going to be construction going on for 3 years on the street and you live 2 houses away, wouldn't you want to know?
Well, that's, the triplicate notice thing is, you get 3 options. First of all, if you are within 200 feet or adjoining, you're notified directly by mail. There is a sign on the property, and there's.
Oh, so when you drive by, that's true.
Show you.
And you should be.
I mean, I don't see the harm in, except a couple of extra stamps. Instead of saying 200 feet, neighbors in, 3 neighbors over, or pick a number, whatever it is.
It'd be safer to just give them.
You can't get, you have to give them.
Well, then-
3 over is
Okay, 600 feet, I don't know, quarter mile.
Oh, wow.
2.8.
Well, it's 2,000 feet. I mean,
That's a lot of people if you.
Good, and they're all people who will care. I mean, is the point of to get as few people as possible to respond, or to get as many people as possible to respond?
No, the key is people that are really going to be impacted by the project.
Because the other
Well, if
people
someone
can't.
was doing something on your street, I know your street.
Yeah, it would
Do you
be-
think everyone on the street would want to know?
We'd
We're
see
all
the
going to know
sign.
what's going on. We all
all
know
know.
what's going on,
Well, what if you're
right?
not here? Or is this kind of slanted towards people who live here?
Probably.
Well, that's
wrong. Unless you have a property manager.
Yes. I'm gonna talk,
Look,
I hear you.
I want to make sure it lines up with the paper.
I know, that's my concern, I have to make, because it's gotta be on for the next meeting. So we have to make sure that we're giving us enough time to get it in the paper and then have it published.
Is it just David that's concerned about the 10 days, or did anyone else think about it, like about?
I think
not
that
being
10 can be a bit short. I think 15 would be
better comment?
good if it works, if it's workable.
Yeah.
So let me look into,
Impact.
See if that all lines up.
basically 15 is going to be, I'm just gonna take. You guys traditionally meet on Tuesdays and the paper comes out on Thursday.
Yeah.
So
It's gonna be, we
Be
submit
the next
it,
week.
if we submit it Wednesday, it doesn't come out
that's
till the
19 days,
following.
Yeah.
19 days. Because it comes out, Thursday,
Yeah.
the next Thursday, the next Thursday, and then the meeting is not till Tuesday, which is 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 days.
So make it 20 days.
In effect, right now, your 10-day notice
Is it 20?
is really, 14 to 15 days right now? Because the paper comes out on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 15 days notice right now.
Let's keep it at 10.
So leave it at
Yes,
10.
no.
And send out more mail.
I'm gonna take that with you.
I think we should leave that where it is.
I mean, speaking firsthand, it's not an adequate process.
That's like saying that if, okay.
I mean, living across the street from a large subdivision, I can tell you, I was never notified.
Right, but that's because by code, you lived significantly farther away.
But that's the
See it out my
whole
window.
point that he's making.
No, I
is
understand that.
by
I
code,
understand
You said
yes,
you were across the street?
but by impact it is.
It's a big lot.
Because if you're across the street, notice is required.
But yeah, well, we're just beyond the threshold of
Okay, I just want
In any
to bring everybody back together because it's 10 to 10. We're not going to pull another November 18th.
One last question.
No, I actually want to, I want to just say about this draft,
Yeah,
with all this input now. We're going to be seeing you, is it the 9th, Jessica, is our next? No, the 14th? What's our next meeting in January.
January 13th.
Can you take the ones that were highlighted, I think it was red, I have a black and white version, but I think on yours it was red or blue, and change those based on how we,
The other comments that we didn't talk about?
no, the key pieces that you had highlighted for us, saying, A, B, C, each one, and we answered for you, keep it,
Yellow.
yellow, sorry.
You mean what we just discussed?
Yes.
I'd like to have now, like, another reworked draft for the next meeting, so
Yeah,
that we
because
can,
this time I took notes.
okay, good. That's all.
You can always,
I have-
so you can always watch the,
Yeah.
again, to be complete, because we should be able to wrap this up. This is,
I think I'd like to wrap it up maybe at the next meeting, and then, David, isn't that?
All I had is fees, because we were talking about penalties. Is the fees in this code, or is it separate?
I didn't specify what the fees are.
Right, so I would say we either put the fees in here too, because that's all, I think, relevant.
The only thing is with fees is.
But then can you not change them? Yeah.
You want it so that they can be changed from time to time by a resolution of the town board.
So
Otherwise, you gotta do the whole local law.
so that's what I thought, which is why maybe penalties should also be the same.
but
I'm just putting it out there, right? I think that's one of the reasons why penalties weren't.
I don't know if penalties are different in that context, because I just know that if when they're not codified,
You want to, I mean, just like the fees are codified, they're just not codified in there, they're codified over here, so the town board can do resolutions. That way,
Well, the idea to make it easier to change, to increase.
because I like to increase, because mainly I think the problem is we have a lot of dollars in some of the code, and it's really small dollars, and it doesn't change because it requires too big of a change.
Yep.
So keeping it out separate makes it easier for us to, if we decide we want to ratchet it up, we can work with the board to do that.
Fair enough. I mean,
That was my,
yeah. Sorry. I think if we go high enough, it's.
We're going to have a
Hold on, no, I had Pam. Pam, are you still with us, or did you want to ask anything? Or anyone, I see Pam in Zoom, but she meant.
See a hand.
no hand up. She's sleeping.
Okay, so someone needs to make a
Motion to
motion.
close?
Motion to close from Matt.
that.
All right, second, David, all in favor?
I.
Thank you, everybody.
I think the penalty ought to be making